Hey there, this is Rob G, and welcome to episode 16 of Killer POV.
What's up, Rob G?
Oh, hi, Elric Kane.
Hi, Rob G.
And hi, Rebekah McKendry.
McCain.
Rebekah
Ooh.
McKendry. That
I'm
sounds
sorry.
pretty hardcore.
How you doing?
That's like a cop name.
I was thinking of you and staring at Elric, and I got them both confused in my
Her
brain.
husband said it was all above the waist today. That's
Yeah.
all.
Because
all I
he was
got.
going to be my date to the Holliston
Yeah.
premiere.
Wow, maybe I
So,
shouldn't be designated. I've been designated the person to kick off the show now
Yeah.
because last time we let Elric do it, he accidentally said Inside Horror.
Different show.
But now I'm messing up your name.
And I'm
so.
just scared of public speaking.
Yeah,
So
as you can
I don't
tell.
handle
That's all
it
right.
well.
In my defense, this is my third podcast today.
Oh, wow.
Alone.
What?
Get a
I'm
real
pretty
job.
Tired. Yeah, right.
People just
Yeah.
like listening to you talk, Rob.
Well, I didn't actually talk in the other ones. I did 2 Dexter ones this morning that were pretty cool, but
He's the Marcel Marceau of
yeah,
podcasts.
I joke that I'm the Fred Norris to the Howard Stern on that. I just occasionally chime in and go, "Yep, that's right." Great. So here we are, new episode. Got a really fun topic. Got some really fun guests. But as always, we like to kick off with what we've seen. So Rebekah,
Yes.
if anyone was on FEARnet this week, I think we know what you saw.
Yeah.
But tell us.
This week I watched Midnight Ballad for Ghost Theater. Have you guys seen this?
No.
No one.
That film doesn't exist.
It does.
No, it
Okay,
doesn't.
so see, this is why I wrote about it on FEARnet. It's a musical. First off, I have to kick off with that.
She's making this all up.
It
but
was
go ahead.
made in
Yeah.
South Korea to be kind of like their answer to Repo and Rocky Horror. So it was made with like this, we've got a cool...
Repo
kind of-
required an answer from South Korea. I am floored by that. Sorry, Dara.
The
So
guy
is this
who-
recent?
It's 2006.
Oh, okay.
And the guy who made it, he was really channeling Tim Burton. So there's a lot of, I can't even say, it doesn't look like it kind of does look like a Tim Burton film. He uses a lot of like miniatures. He uses this big cathedral-esque theater with all of these kind of sweeping camera movements, this camera moving through space and things like that. So you're getting a lot of Tim Burton feel behind it. But the whole concept of the movie is this celebration of the film industry. So I say it's kind of like if Rocky Horror was mixed with Hugo. And it reminds me of this, there's this Taiwanese movie that came out a couple years ago called Goodbye Dragon Inn, which is about the Taipei cinema. And it's got a lot of that in it. But the whole story of it is about this teenage girl who is taking care of her ailing grandmother. And one night her grandmother says to her that she's going to go see a movie one last time before she dies. And she goes to this dilapidated movie palace at the edge of town, goes inside the doors and disappears, and nobody sees her again. So she doesn't die. She just disappears. And so the teenage girl decides that the cops can't find anything. So the teenage girl decides that it must have something to do with the theater. So she gets a job working there, still trying to find her grandmother. And she discovers that the theater is haunted by the ghosts of film industry's past. So
Spoilers!
It's not. This all happens in like the first 20 minutes.
Okay.
So she finds out that the theater is haunted by these ghosts of the film industry. So it's these people who used to work on films when film was like a much more lavish thing. And it's a celebration of the movie palace and things like that. And they sing songs and tell her stories about the film industry's past before and at the same time they're helping to find her grandmother. So and it's just this wonderful little horror story. So I watched that this week. We have some guests staring at us through the window. It's very kind of
very
It's like
creepy.
Halloween 3.
yeah, it's very kind of body snatchers like. So but anyway, so that is Midnight Ballad for Ghost Theater. It was released in Korea in 2006. It played at a couple festivals here, but that was it. It never got released in the US. And
Check
there's
your
no
local
plans to.
listings
Yeah.
for that
Would you
one.
get an import of it?
Yeah, I have an import.
All right.
So there's no plans to release it either. And what's weird is like the subtitles on it are beautiful, but yeah, never made it here. I also watched this week, hold on, I wrote it down just so. Oh, Event Horizon. I rewatched Event Horizon because I was having an argument with one of our Fango writers who was saying that Event Horizon may have been scary when I watched it when I was like in 12th grade, but that it doesn't hold up over time. It's like campy now.
And
So
does it?
I went back and watched it. It still holds up pretty well. Not as well as Adam Green's nipple.
We're not telling them who the guests are.
No.
You will
Oh,
not know
damn.
who our guests are.
But they're pressing their nipples.
Event
against
Horizon's
the window,
awesome.
So we can't help
Except for the guy who flies off into space. That part's kind of lame and silly. But Sam Neill's so great in that film.
He is, and he's still really terrifying.
I
It's still
am
really
home.
creepy.
I haven't seen it in years, but it is the only. What's the director?
Paul
Thomas.
Paul-
Anderson.
Paul, I'm not Thomas Anderson.
Anderson.
The bad
Yeah.
one.
PWA instead of PTA.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the only movie of his that I
Yeah,
consider
it's surprising how he
watchable.
made a good movie.
Yeah. And I mean, one of our writers was saying that it's gotten really cheesy and, you shouldn't recommend it to people anymore. And it's just like Hellraiser in space. But
that's a good thing.
It is kind of Hellraiser in space.
Yeah, that's a good thing. It was,
I
definitely
still
was
love
Hellraiser.
it. So.
Yeah, you should fire that guy for being a little bitch. You hear me?
I'm going to
Sam
tell
Zimmerman.
him
I'm just guessing.
It's not Sam.
Okay.
It was not
I don't
Sam.
care. I'm going to throw a wide net.
Say,
whoever you are.
Elric Kane says fire you.
Like Rambo and Rambo 2. Which was my all-time favorite line in cinema.
So, Elric, what did you see this week?
All right. I got some good stuff.
Oh,
all right.
Man.
So I was watching Friday the 13th Part 3 at the barbecue of Matthew Curry Holmes. It was about 1 in the morning. They put on Friday the 13th Part 3. Matthew Curry Holmes
went
star.
Till 3 a.m.?
Yeah, went to it. Matthew Curry Holmes star of Joe Lynch's Wrong Turn 2, which also ties into our guest. We put on Friday the 13th Part 3. And it's what it is. It's fun. I enjoy watching it. But halfway through, I started to think to myself, like, I've never thought about this as the written word, like the script of this movie. I'm like, who would write, what does this read like? Like, somebody walks through the forest with a giant knife. Anyway, so we're watching it and I start getting really excited. I'm like, we have to while we're watching it, get the script, download the script, and let's read each line before it happens. Right. I don't know why. It sounds like a weird drinking game, but I was really excited about it. And it was actually pretty hilarious how basic the script was once we got to it. But the crazy part is, so we get to the by the time we actually got to it, this is when it pretty much happened. We get to probably the last act. And I'm all excited. I think it's, Shelley's dead. Spoiler. You can see him at trivia night. He does show up. We got to pretty much the last two people, the final girl and her boyfriend, when the boyfriend gets his face squeezed and his eyeballs pop out.
Yeah.
And I swear to you, the script that we downloaded then says, this is the end of this is the end because from here on they did not use their script. And there's nothing. It's the end of the printed script. So the last 25 minutes of Friday the 13th Part 3 is just off script.
Oh my God.
And I never would have known this had I not been watching it and been drunk and demanding that we read the script while we watch the movie. Anyway, so that was really weird. So we couldn't figure out if they wrote a new script or if it was somehow improv or worked out on set.
The writer just stopped.
It was very strange.
I'm done, guys. I'm done.
But and the other burning question I had watching the film. Okay, so the guy who walks on his hands, because I remember that's one of the things I remembered most from being a kid, is that death. The guy who walks on, all I was thinking the whole time is, did he get cast because he can walk on his hands, or did they write it in to the script because the guy happened to be able to walk on his hands? So I researched it afterwards.
Oh, you did?
I did. And he had to learn to walk on his hands to get the role.
They actually wrote that into the script?
It was the script. The script was, the kill was actually written, hey, this guy walks around the house on his hands, which surprised me. I genuinely thought, because he's so good at it, I thought, oh, it must have been because the guy was doing it around set, they threw it in there. So I think he had been in Karate Kid, and so maybe he had some athletic abilities, and his name is Jeffrey Rogers, and he's a doctor now. So you can rest assured. So anyway, I needed to know that. I was very excited.
So if he's your doctor, ask him to walk on his hands.
But last night, this is it. I'm super excited about this one, I got to say, because I hadn't seen this in a long time. Creepshow 2. I was just telling Becca about it.
Yeah, we were talking about this at lunch today.
I hadn't rewatched this film in years. Last night, I got back after meeting Becca and Dave, and I put it on. The first one's insufferably dull, the first story in it.
George Kennedy.
Yeah,
George
Kennedy.
Only good thing about it, but it's still
it's just totally boring.
Right?
Yeah, the Indian one. The second one on the raft is an awesome concept, great creatures, some great effects, but still kind of boring. The third film's the greatest short film I've ever seen in my whole entire living life. And if I go today, that will be it was so good. The thanks for the ride, lady.
Yeah, scared the crap out of me.
But it's also funny and bizarre, and it just keeps coming at you. I was genuinely kind of taken back when I got to that one at the end and didn't remember it. Yeah. I mean, I remembered the idea of it, but man, I loved it. So if anyone hasn't seen it, I would just skip that first story entirely.
Yeah.
The second one's still
Raft
interesting.
Is great.
Yeah.
Raft is probably my favorite of all the Creepshow skits.
I like the setup. I think it would make a great feature done in a modern. The one thing I'll say about Creepshow 2 is I feel the directing is actually really clunky with the actors and it's Romero's DP on all his previous films, and you get the feeling like he's better with the visual setup and the effects than he is with the actors. Right. But yeah, that Hitcher, it was so fun. The Hitchhiker was one of the most fun shorts I've seen in a long time. So it was totally worth revisiting. And I can't believe, I think I was missing this. What's the Christian Slater Blondie anthology?
Oh, Tales from the Dark Side.
I think that's
which I love.
I think for years I've been thinking that was Creepshow 2 in my mind somewhere, and I just was mixing the two up.
Well, technically it's Creepshow 3.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah, because it's Savini, it's George Romero.
Oh, so they made it under Creepshow.
Intended to be. I mean, it's called Tales from the Dark Side.
But no AJ Bowen.
Was it just a marketing thing?
I don't know. I for whatever reason, I guess they couldn't make Creepshow 3. I don't think they could use the title.
Yeah.
And at that point, Tales from the Dark Side, I think the show was already on someone. They made the
I feel like
version.
they could redo Creepshow as not remake the movies, but just as a title that we start making really great anthologies under.
I don't know who
Look it up.
Whoever
it'd be so
made
good.
3, I think still has the rights to it. And they tried to do a web series version a few years ago.
Yeah, but that
there was only one skit, and it was with Michael Madsen, which was actually all right. It's a lot of vulgar profanity for no reason, and it could have been a cool idea, but yeah, I don't know who owns the Creepshow property. Because
as a label, it's great. It's even better than Tales from Crypt. It's just like this thing that would get you excited, especially if they chose different directors to do each one, unlike how they did the other two.
Yeah.
I think that'd be cool, and young directors, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I saw, the thing I love about horror is that there's always so many sub-genres within horror. Whether you want your vampire movies or whatever it is, like
South Korean musicals,
creature features. But for me, I always like jumping into a subgenre that's topical or for me it's the seasonal thing. So now it's summertime, so now it's time for summertime slashers.
Ooh.
If they take place in camp, that's fine, but I like the summertime vibe. So the one I broke out was Just Before Dawn. Good. Which is it Jeff Lieberman's first movie?
Before Squirm? I thought Squirm was his first, but I could be wrong.
It's the same director as Squirm and Blue Sunshine.
I told you he came into Jump Cut.
Oh, yeah,
Are you serious?
Totally randomly, because he's a New Yorker.
Yeah.
And he wandered and he looked at me and goes, I make movies. He literally said that to me behind the counter. I said, oh, cool. And he goes, yeah, my name's Jeff Lieberman. And I looked at him and go, dude, I almost created a drink called Blue Sunshine because I love that film so much. And he was like, oh, great. It was very random,
Yeah. So Just Before Dawn is kind of his, that's his slasher movie. And it's kind of an underrated, not very well known one.
Strange one. Greg Henry's
in it.
One of my favorite actors.
Super young in it. George Kennedy, ironically enough, is also in that.
That's right, yeah.
And
Rod Stewart song, right? Isn't that the one with Rod Stewart's song?
There's a Blondie song in it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That must have been the trivia question.
It was the one song they actually paid licensing for was the Blondie song. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward slasher. It's, a bunch of kids go out to this, cabin, but there's a really cool twist regarding the killer. And I like it because it's one of those really minimalistic movies. Like there's barely a score. It's just like occasionally you hear some kind of sound stuff. But I like it. And it reminded me also not, I guess tonally, like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre has this thing where it looks very documentary-esque. Mm-hmm. I assume Just Before Dawn was probably shot on 16, maybe Super 8, but it got that
Super
weird.
8. It could have been 16 for sure.
16 like look to it. It almost feels like documentary-esque, even though it's not. But the fact that most of it's quiet, like all the scares and all the stuff, like there's no stingers or anything. It's just all played really straight and quiet. And there's something like really eerie about that. So,
and Greg Henry had hair.
He did. He's very young in it.
He is very young. I remember watching that recently, and he's in the new season of The Killing, which I got so excited. Well, the new season, I like that show anyway, but when I saw the first episode, they had upped the ante by like tenfold. It's like, it opens with like Greg Henry as one of the cops. Then it leads Peter Sarsgaard's on death row as a serial killer. Who else was in there? It's like 3 other, Elias Cortez as a cop. Suddenly I'm like, whoa, this show went from being canceled to like coming back with an all-star movie cast. And it's all a serial killer storyline, like really grotesque, and I think it's going to be a great season. But yeah, Greg Henry is one of those actors I always get excited to see because of Body Double by De Palma and playing the driller killer Indian in disguise. Spoiler.
So that's what we saw this week. And we got a pretty fun topic that, we always try to cater our topics to our guests. So why don't we bring our guests in now? You guys will also, if you're listening to podcasts on Geek Nation, you should know that they also have a show here called The Movie Crypt, which just started a couple of weeks ago.
They what?
Yeah, this is, you can consider this our crossover one.
They have a competitive movie podcast against us?
Yeah. So we've got,
Good Lord.
Oh, I see. So it's like keep your enemies close.
Come to us.
So we've got Joe Lynch and Adam Green joining us today. How's it going, guys?
It's going great.
They
It's going
have
awesome.
super big gulps.
Hey, now.
And they're showing us their nipple through the window, which was pretty hot.
I don't
It was.
remember that.
I
part.
did that. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Sorry to lump you together on that.
Don't
get
lump
lumped
me together
together.
with Adam's nipples.
It happens often.
Didn't I see you licking a dinosaur or something?
It was a do-back?
Yeah, actually, it was.
Thank you. I couldn't see the exact.
And it was deep throating, not licking.
And it
Thank
was
you.
at the
There is a
exact
difference.
moment that you name checked Wrong Turn 2. So.
It was.
Yes.
Because I was talking about
my spidey sense was tingling. And I was like, I need to deep throat a Star Wars figure.
Yes.
We're discussing Matthew Curry Holmes' performance in that film.
Oh, a commanding
It
performance.
was a commanding performance.
Before we go any further, I meant to ask you this back on the first time we met on
This Week in Horror.
This Week in Horror, yeah.
Wow.
What is your accent? Where is it?
New
from?
Zealand.
New Zealand.
But I was born in Brooklyn, so I
Because it's sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. So.
And I get people writing on our old Inside Horror show. They'll write under, "Where's that guy? Is he putting on an English accent?" I'm like, "No, I just sound like a weird Canadian."
Yeah,
I'm just gonna say Calgary from now on.
After my mom watched the show the first time, she was like, "That British boy is cute." And I was
Her
like,
mom's hot though, and I totally would hit it.
British accents are infinitely sexy.
I'd go back in time and have you.
"I'll tell my mom you said that."
Wow.
Wow, it got real weird.
Joe's got a hot mom.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Oh my god.
Oh, man.
Oh
Hold on,
my
pull up
god.
what's the handle?
Dude,
for
why
it?
did you have to bring that up?
Because people always say my dad's hot. Like my wife does that to me. She's like, "Oh, your dad's so hot." I'm like, "That's so gross."
That is even weirder. Saying a girl saying that sounds weirder to me for some reason.
Do you think there's sometimes when you have sex, she's just like, "Oh, Green Senior."
No. Oh God, I hope not. Especially because he goes by Dick. Maybe that's what she means.
When she's saying,
That's funny.
"Fill me with dick,"
Oh,
maybe
God.
she's
Come on
actually
now.
thinking of the Elder Green.
The show just went really weird, really
Yeah,
quick.
that's
What did you think would happen?
did you expect?
The moment we
Yeah.
came in, we're like monkeys outside. Like, let us in, let us in.
Well, you missed us talking about Creepshow 2, and
Ooh.
thanks for the ride, lady. Yeah, that was fun.
And hold on, have either of you guys seen it? My choice for this week was Midnight Ballad for Ghost Theater. It's a South Korean film.
No, I've never
No, I
seen
haven't.
What
it.
is up with
Wait,
everybody?
you haven't seen
I would
it?
guess
No, I
Joe, if
haven't.
anybody, might have heard of it, but if you
I
I'm
haven't
surprised.
seen
It's
it.
not released in the U.S., so you have to have like the cool regionless player. But
I have a child that the region-free player goes out the door.
Yeah, but
when
you've
that
seen
happens.
everything. This is the first time somebody's ever brought up a movie where you were instantly like a 20-minute dissertation on it the moment they said it.
Great, thanks for emasculating me. No, he's cut my geek
read
balls off.
every book. He's seen every movie. He knows like every director's name. Like,
wow.
yeah,
That's
he's,
my specialty is unknown and hard to find horror films. I actually have a blog about
Oh,
it.
so
on
that's why you
FEARnet,
know our
so-
work. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad I could find something that you haven't.
But now
seen.
I have to see it.
Yeah, it's a musical and it's not that bad. I have a baby and I watch it with her, so it was okay.
You make it sound like she always
yeah,
does
it is
that.
pretty child friendly.
Every week I watch that film with my child.
He showed his kid Inside and Martyrs. I was like, I think.
Yeah, when my 4-year-old son watched Martyrs and we had a nice little discussion afterwards, he was just like, "Yeah, it was a little too esoteric for me." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right, Remy. Let's go back and watch episode 3 again."
See,
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. I don't even know what esoteric means.
Strange and quirky.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I've heard people talk about Holliston like that. They call it
Esoteric?
very esoteric.
Esoteric. It tends to mean that it only appeals to a certain audience.
Who
It's
get
not
the
like
reference.
Bingo!
Oh, see, I always thought it meant homoerotic. I was like, that's weird.
so esoteric.
Oh man. So the topic we picked out because
that's right.
Because
I'm glad we got off of my mom. That's great.
yes,
Literally and
get off
figuratively.
I
your
still
mom.
haven't gotten off your mom.
we'll
I was
get
waiting
back
for
on
that.
your mom before you know it. Don't worry about it.
I'm Marina.
But no, since Holliston is loosely based on kind of your life, right? For the most part.
I'd say more tightly based
I was going to
than
say,
loosely.
define loosely.
It's pretty.
How loose or tight is this
Well,
story vagina that is Adam's life?
I'd like to think that you're not, cutting yourself in front of the mirror of your
Not anymore. I haven't done that in
ex-girlfriend's
like 3 years.
All right, good. So that part is somewhat exaggerated.
Once he got that in the can, so to speak, he doesn't have to do it again.
Right, it's
Exactly,
done. I
yeah.
see therapy through that. So because of that, there's tons of movies that claim to be based on true stories or based on true events or whatever that
Almost
might be.
all horror films that
I
comes out
brought
at
a
some
list.
point. Almost all of
we'll
them.
say that. But
And Fargo is based on a true story.
Hey,
Right.
yeah.
Like Texas
Hey.
Chainsaw, they'll tie it in after the fact.
Yeah.
Right.
Which happens a lot. And we actually, with Frozen, because we were, looking it up and like it has happened where people have been stranded. A great story is the fact that the week that it opened, it happened in Russia where people got, one guy got forgotten. It's just human error. They did their check. Somebody didn't do their job. The guy got left. He was there for about almost 48 hours, and then he was rescued, severe hypothermia. He lived. He's okay. There were no wolves or anything like that, but there were reviews about the movie that were like, once you can get over the ridiculous setup that this could ever happen, and this is so ridiculous, and then they started pulling down their reviews and changing them because it happened.
Yeah.
But we did at one point think like, should we say based on true events? Because it kind of has happened. It's not based on anybody's specific story, but we didn't do that.
yeah.
There needs to be a new one just like this shit could happen. Instead of based on real, this shit could happen.
This shit
Could
could
be
happen.
inspired by real events.
This could really happen.
I like
someday.
that. I think
like
that's
this shit
good.
could happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because obviously Ed Gein inspired so many of them.
Yeah, and yet none of them are like his
Just an
story.
inspirational dude all around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But I
all
mean,
the
you know.
movies that I've seen that have been like carbon copies of the Ed Gein story
Yeah,
are kind
terrible.
of shitty.
Yeah,
so,
It did what? Who's the guy who played him and also played Manson from the stuntman?
Steve Railsback.
Railsback.
Yeah.
He's pretty good. He'll give a great performance, and then the film will be crap. You know, it's you never get them both together. But then things like Psycho took such a leap away from that because they had such good material to base the character on.
Yeah.
But like that's when these adaptations of those real serial killers seem to really gel. When you really go kind of away from the reality of their crimes and just take the essence of what they did. You know?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that comes down to marketing, though. I
Right.
mean, Hitchcock didn't go, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do a Hitchcock impression. There you go. Much better. But when Psycho came out, it was from what I've read, it was always this is based on a true story after the fact. Like that was just used to get people into seats.
Right.
It wasn't like he was trying to be so slavish to the history of Ed Gein or
But
any of the
I don't know about that.
mythology
Did you
behind
see that film Hitchcock?
Yes, I did.
Okay, see, I don't know what that's based on. Obviously,
yeah,
It's probably
because
a
he
bunch of
did
bollocks.
in that.
it. I think it was based on a Mad Magazine article.
It probably was, and that was a good one, and I trust it. But no, the part where he would get them all in the room and show them all the photos of Ed Gein's murders.
Yeah.
It seems like maybe he used the fetish element of that.
That's what it
Yeah.
was.
You know,
It
that's
was it was like a marketing ploy. It
Right.
was a sales ploy, but I don't think he was really sitting there going like, I don't think that the swirls of the shower head, as the
Right.
blood goes in, it should be going the other way.
Right.
He wasn't that detail oriented.
Right. And that seems to be the healthy way to adapt these stories. I feel often people complain, that was based on a real story, but they totally deviated. I think that makes for a better film, better
Well, I mean,
entertainment. When you're
movies
too
are
close
movies.
to the facts, it's not as interesting. Even The Entity, goes one of my favorite films based on true event. It's still taking some pretty huge leaps. As soon as it's visualizing certain things, it's taking leaps.
I just hope
Yeah.
I just hope that the scene where her boobies are getting fondled by
That was
an invisible
completely
man,
real.
I hope that's real.
They were Japanese
I really do.
businessmen.
Supposedly, yeah. Supposedly,
Japanese
she said that she
businessmen.
was being groped by Japanese businessmen. How she knew that her ghosts were Japanese?
No, it was a
and
psychic. A psychic
businessmen.
told her.
Oh yeah, it was
Yeah.
a psychic. That was
That was
it.
a weird trivia question that
Yeah,
you guys asked.
because I asked that one at Horror Trivia, and the whole room was like, "What the
Except
hell?"
me,
Except for
because
one
I was so
person.
excited about
it. Was
it.
you and one person from FEARnet. Was it Lawrence?
Probably.
I think
Lawrence
it
knows
was like
his
one
stuff.
person
Yeah,
from FEARnet
Lawrence,
who was.
Lawrence just strokes his beard and then just gets the answer immediately, like boom.
Yeah, but I asked what horror film, what horror film was based off the sexual molestation of Japanese
By Japanese men. And everyone guessed Japanese films. Obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
everybody
like,
was
I don't
like,
know.
"Oh, I don't know."
It's like a
audition.
throwaway line in the film. It's totally throwaway. It's just the psychic goes, I believe they're Japanese, a group of Japanese, just to make you feel
Yeah.
really dirty.
Right.
Rebecca dropping the obscure reference.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Winning at Final Cut Cafe or Jump Cut Cafe, actually, which I've never been there.
Well,
I've
you
heard
have.
nothing.
I've
but
seen
great
you
things
there.
about it. Well, I went to that one
Brian
night.
Collins.
We had to support the Collins and
Yeah,
see
please.
his.
Yes.
I've
see
never
his
been out of my house.
face.
You should come again.
Unless it's
Bring your
too
child on Sunday. We're very child friendly.
yeah. Got Italian ices now. It's a
Got
big
some
deal.
Italian ices.
I had my
kids.
daughter there this morning.
Wait, you have Italian ice?
When you get chocolate
Yeah,
ice
Italian
cream,
ice.
let me
Do
know.
you have the little wooden scoops for it?
No, I should get that.
Oh, that's the
Philadelphia
key.
thing. All right.
that's the
That's like camp.
fait
And then you
accompli.
flip
You have to
it
have
over
those.
first, and you eat the bottom of it
Yup.
because it's all
Oh my
crystallized.
god, dude,
That's so
the
East
part.
Coast.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But now, do you guys feel like the whole based on a true story thing has only been amplified because of the whole found footage thing and how they're really exploiting the idea of reality? Like the fact that what I loved about Paranormal Activity was no Paramount sign in the beginning, no credits at the end, at least for the first film.
Yeah.
At least when they showed it the first time before it got sold to Paramount and when Blumhouse got involved, I saw it at CAA. They had like a special screening of it, and I swear to God, everyone thought it was real by the end.
Right.
Or even going back further, when I went to Sundance in, God, it was 99. No, it was 2000 when they first showed Blair Witch.
Yeah.
And back up a little bit. I was there for Trauma.
Oh.
And
Oh my
and
gosh.
I was oh God, I got stories for days on that.
I got stories too.
But I was there because Ravenous was playing at the Eccles Theater on the left side. And of course, Toxic Avenger had to be there. So I was sitting next to Roger Ebert watching Ravenous. having a miserable time because I can only see out of one eye, and I'm trying to watch the movie, and you'd have no clue what the hell's going on.
The Toxic Avenger.
I was Toxic Avenger
That was
in the room.
Did he have you dressed in the tutu?
Oh, I had the
just,
tutu, the
okay.
mop, the whole nine. You know, like, of course, because Lloyd's like, but the thing is, Lloyd would never say, "Hey, Joe, Troma, go get the Toxie costume." He would go, "Hey, Joe, where's Toxie?" Because he believes, I think to this day, that Toxic Avenger is real. He really does. I swear to God. He never goes, "Go get the stinky condom-smelling thing that's been in a box for 12 years."
They've never washed the mask.
They've never washed the mask.
It's horrific. And they use it in the movies at this point now.
And it's used for every event. It's disgusting. But I'm sitting there watching Ravenous, and then when we come out, and everyone was kind of nonplussed about the movie, but we walk out, and in the theater next to us, there are people who are walking out like they just saw a ghost. Like they saw something so real, and it freaked them out. People walking out like they saw the dead. So we're taking that long bus ride up, and I just had to ask someone, of course, I had to take the Toxie costume off because I didn't want to scare everybody on the bus. And I just said, "So what did you see? Like, what was?" And this lady's like, "Oh my God, I saw a snuff film." Needless to say, next morning at 5 a.m., I'm in line getting a ticket for it. And the way that they positioned it was they positioned it like it was a real film. They didn't have the filmmakers do a Q&A afterwards. There was no credits. It was just, and there it is. The Blair Witch Project is out there. And everyone thought it was real until, God, it was like maybe a month before the actual film came out because they had, like, I remember in New York City, they had signs like missing kids, you know, like.
They did too. I was in college at the time. I was at Virginia Tech, which is really close to where it was supposed to actually be filmed. And they had missing posters all over campus. So we all thought it was real.
Savvy marketing, you know?
Until the girl appeared on Letterman, and then everybody was like, "Oh, she's alive."
Yeah, that's how I saw it. Where, my agent, I was still living in Boston, so this was like 99, 2000. Sent me just a VHS tape with a Post-it that said, "Here's some footage some people found. Tell me if you think there's a good idea for a movie here." And I'm watching it, and I'm bored. And then I'm like, this is really weird. So I start looking it up online, and I'm seeing all those websites with missing kids reports and stuff. And like the one part that threw me was when Mike says, "Oh, I kicked that map into the creek. It was used." I was like, he's acting. That was the only time. But other than that, like, I just totally fell for it. I loved it. And then I started sending it to all my friends and showing everybody that I could. But then by the time it came out, you knew it was a movie, and that sort of ruins it. Somebody else, I think Uncle Creepy from Dread Central, was just telling me how when there was a screening of Paranormal Activity, like the midnight screening when it opened, they had Katie and Mika there to introduce the movie. And it's like, okay, you just ruined it for everybody.
Take them right out.
Quick Paranormal Activity caveat: when we were shooting Frozen, my assistant at the time, Cody Snyder, the only horror movie he'd really seen was Hatchet, which is a comedy, and he can't stand horror. He's scared of it and terrified. And I'm like, I got something for you, because I had a really early copy of Paranormal, and I'm like, we're gonna watch it on our day off. I'm forcing you to sit through this. He's like, oh man, I don't know. So the night comes, we've been building this thing up. He's sitting there on the couch in the dark, wrapped in pillows. He's so scared. And Emma Bell, who was Parker in Frozen, she was dating this guy named Blake, who was there for the whole shoot but never spoke. Good looking dude, nothing to say. And everyone's just like, I don't know what the deal is with Blake. He never speaks. So we start the movie, and then they walked into the house that they had me in. And I'm like, guys, just be quiet. We're watching a movie. And Blake looks at the screen and goes, "Oh, it's my friend Katie from acting class," and ruins the entire thing. And Cody's like, wait. Yo, this isn't real. I'm like, God damn it, Blake, the one time you speak.
That's awesome.
Well, that's an interesting point, though, because actually, Blair Witch was like the first viral kind of campaign thing, because internet was still kind of new at the time. I mean, everyone still had their dial-up and everything in 99. But I remember that was one of the first things that I went out of my way to look up.
Yeah, the Haxon site.
And
that
there
they
was,
set up.
there was a site for it, and the kids have been missing, and you're trying to, read about the Blair Witch thing and stuff.
Imagine if it had been released online back then. Before, like just online with nothing, not even in cinemas, just this video was leaked online and people were watching it and sharing it. Yeah, it would have lasted for months. Yeah. People believing
and
that.
It really is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Yeah. And I don't think people give it enough credit for how ingenious of an idea it was, how well executed it was. I mean, every step of the way, what a good job they did with that movie. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I hated it. I never believed it. Well, you saw it once it had been marketed.
When they were putting it out as scarier than The Exorcist, you go, okay, it's a movie. We get it.
And that's the blessing and the curse of a good review like that. Like there's some of the stuff I've done. I've seen the reviews that come in and I'm like, well, that's a great review. oh shit, like you can't live up to that. Like,
Yeah.
but obviously the distributor's going to use it. So, but yeah, Blair Witch is just fantastic.
Although, to go back a little bit, it's really not. I mean, Cannibal Holocaust. If you look at Cannibal Holocaust, I still to this day, I mean, there's some stuff in there. I go, that's real.
Right, he had to go to court to prove.
Yeah, I mean, when a
that
projectionist
the
gets arrested,
Yeah,
for showing the film, to me, I'm going, sweet, I have to see this movie.
Well, and that happened last year too, right? Who's this? What's the film?
A Serbian film?
Yeah,
The
Serbian film.
Serbian film?
The festival director who showed it got arrested.
When we were at
child
Fright
pornography.
Fest, actually, this is funny. When we were at Fright Fest in 2010, it was 2010, they were showing Serbian film. That was going to be one of their premieres. So the filmmakers were flying in from Serbia to England, and in the span of time between their commute from Serbia to England, the British board banned the film from being shown at Fright Fest. They said you had to cut out 8 minutes of the film for them to show it.
And good for them, because they said, well, then we won't show it at all.
And they stood their ground and said, all right, then don't show the movie.
it's great.
Now, this was also the same year that I Spit on Your Grave was there, and they made those guys cut the film. They cut was it like 3 or 4 minutes from the film?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean,
run a horror film festival and force people to do that.
It was-
What's the British classification
you're
system?
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's the problem with the Commonwealth.
Because Fright Fest is so connected to that, they didn't want to, cause any trouble. So they're like, okay, and they posed the question to both filmmakers. The guys who did I Spit on Your Grave said okay, and the Serbian guys said F you. And
But they still came, which I thought was very commendable. They
Yeah, that's
came
cool.
and they
hung out.
They apologized to the audience for why the movie wasn't being shown and explained why, and everybody applauded them for that. And then they showed Buried in its place, which was a great, I think, substitute. It wasn't like, and here's this other weird indie that you might like. I don't know. I mean, Buried was
but at the same time, when you go to Fright Fest, those fans are hardcore.
Right.
They want to see the most unbelievably insane horror. And this film is like, wait, baby porn? Okay, I got to see this movie.
Yeah.
And when you take that away from that crowd, they get pretty irate.
Right.
They start throwing beers at the screen and stuff.
I've never seen it.
Everyone kept, it's hard to discuss without spoilers because I remember having just had a kid, and I was in that sleep phase where I was just tired as hell, and I got to the most disturbing part of the film, and I fell asleep.
Newborn porn!
When
you fell asleep during newborn porn?
I opened my eyes, I looked at what's
really?
happening, I went, and went back to sleep, and it didn't even get my heart racing. I don't know why. The whole
Have you
thing
ever
just
met
kind of...
Adam Barnick?
I don't think so.
so.
That name
No.
doesn't ring a bell.
Really?
I'm glad you brought him up because he was hoping we would name drop him
Really?
on tonight's podcast.
Dude, he's the New Zealand Adam Barnick. Like, can
Yeah, you
not
really
say
do.
that?
You know what? I
What does
never
he do?
thought
What does
about
he
it.
do?
It's a
feel.
compliment. He is one of the greatest human beings on the planet. He is one of the most talented people in the world. He's an awesome guy.
That,
So
went
it's-
from being something hard to live up to now.
it's a compliment. If someone ever says
I'll
you
take it.
remind me of Adam Barnick,
I'll
then
take it.
that's a good thing.
He's
Yeah.
a fantastic filmmaker that we met, years ago. He has a short that was in one of the Fangoria compilations.
Cool.
Beautiful
Blood Drop
looking
2.
film.
Yeah.
Beautiful looking film. He actually did the documentary for Frozen.
And Grace.
Yep.
And he was
I
at
love Grace. Grace is a really interesting
He's the
film.
reason we're friends.
Yeah, he was
because
at the world
he
premiere of
caught-
Hatchet at Tribeca.
He was the first person to he wrote for Icons of Fright in the beginning. We were good friends back in the East Coast. He's the first one that saw Hatchet and came running to us and be like, "We have to promote this movie on the site." And I'm like, "Great, write a review."
that there's that whole. I'm not going to get into it here, but the D. Snyder story about how he and I became friends, and that was the night that he showed up
and he
watched me
shot that story. I
He
forgot
got
about
it
that.
all on.
Wait, that was
tape.
him?
Yeah,
Yes,
Adam Barnick
and
was
then-
the one who taped it.
And then the festival coordinator came over and said, "I'm sorry, we have to confiscate your tape." And I was
And
like,
they
"No,
did.
no, no!" I'm like, "The most amazing thing just happened here. My childhood idol just showed up at my premiere, and this is you don't understand." And they're like, "No," and they took it and they trashed it because credibility for the festival. What if he had been filming the screen and released it? So
that's a bummer.
Really unfortunate, but. Barnick saw the premiere of Hatchet 1, the premiere of Hatchet 2, and so in Boston last week, we did that fundraiser. He took a train on a work night to Boston so he could see Hatchet 3 the very first time it was shown, and then waited around all night till 5 a.m. till the train started again, and then went back to New York.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
bad.
That's dedication.
That's dedication.
That is bad.
And that's why
Yeah.
we love Adam Barnick.
Yeah.
Nice. Takeaway.
So that's a compliment.
Okay, back to Legend of Boggy Creek, which we haven't discussed. When we're going to throw around
anyway,
real...
my point before we get to that, because we were talking about how somebody posited the question, had all of the found footage films, how did that related to the modern day based on a true story. I still think that all of the ones that were based on a true story were all 70s. It seems like in the 70s, everything was based on a true story.
Like Amityville Horror and the things like that.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
what are some of your favorites, I guess? Like what are some of the ones that stuck with you?
I made a list.
Oh, you made a list. Good.
Yeah,
Of
I
course.
will link the
But
list,
don't you
though.
feel like that, like the documentary, what was it, American Scream or American Nightmares? There was that,
that was a really good
documentary
one.
that would reflect every horror film from 1968, which was 69 with Night of the Living Dead, and ended with Halloween.
I think that's Nightmares in Red, White, and Blue.
No, that's American Scream because it
it
talked
is?
about how Last House on the Left was from Vietnam.
exactly.
And
Maybe they both
frames
do that.
them all in like a reality.
It's a really brilliant documentary, but it takes every single like seminal horror film from Night of the Living Dead to I believe there was a Cronenberg movie, whether it was Shivers or it was The Brood, or there was something in
The
there.
Brood.
Yeah,
because it talked about his divorce.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but it took all these significant moments in history and related them to a film. You know,
Right.
so I think that especially in the 70s when you had like Terrence Malick making beauty out of like awful real life crimes that would otherwise be seen as like in cold blood, and he's making them into beautiful filmmaking, or French Connection, which is technically based on a true story, but then you have Friedkin come in and make it into something bigger, or The Exorcist. Everyone,
and a lot of documentary style shooting in all those films you just mentioned to reflect what they're watching on TV.
Yeah, if you think about
at war,
a lot of those films, you can't really think. I mean, other than say Scorsese, there wasn't a lot of panache. It's not like you had Sam Raimi in '81, doing real life crimes. No, he's moving the camera around all over the place. But in the '70s, when you had Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that's as stark as they come.
Yeah.
Although it really bothers me, and I think thankfully, we were in the age where they started doing Laserdisc recreations or digital
reissues
touch-ups
and remasters,
of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Because for the longest time, everyone thought that movie was shot like a documentary, and it's not.
Right. Yeah, it's got some
so
beautiful
far
shots,
removed from being a documentary, but it just because it looked like crap, and like all the old MPI versions of that on VHS were all like
faded
blown
out
out and faded.
Yeah.
It had a documentary feel. I think it's just at that time the cultural significance of the time was leaning everyone towards a more realistic touch, and then you get into the '80s and it just becomes more of gregarious splatter.
Slasher
and more gloss.
franchises.
Gloss.
Yeah.
It's very different aesthetic.
But you're right, though. I think the '70s just had a more realistic palette.
That was the trend. And when I was looking over the list of my faves, like most of them were from late 70s. So
You know what
it
it
was
could have
definitely
also been? It could have
something
also
then.
been a way to bring in adults as part of the audience to say, hey, these are based on real true stories. So this is something you can understand. It's not just fantasy escapism like monster movies were aimed for younger audiences. So maybe this was a way as, hey, this is affecting you. Come watch this movie. It's about a real house in Long Island. Come check it out.
Well, that was actually, it supposedly, if you look at like horror history over times, it waxes and wanes back and forth, where like the 1950s and 60s were primarily teen audiences with your, I was a zombie werewolf or whatnot. And then the 70s comprise adult audiences. The 80s, it goes back to teens. 90s become adult again. 2000s are teens.
God knows where we are now.
Shooting it all on little digital cameras.
I don't even know what I am anymore.
But I'm glad you brought that up because, like, Amityville, like I live 20 minutes away from the Amityville house. So every Halloween, my mom would just pour every kid that we could get on the block into her big monster truck, because my mom was into monster trucks. And we would drive over to the Amityville.
Told you she was hot.
Yeah. Shut up. I knew that was coming. Don't say it. Don't say it.
I'm not going to say it.
But we would go to the house. And at the time, it was the Amityville Horror House was bought by a Newsday. Newsday is the Long Island newspaper. This columnist, I cannot remember his name for the life of me, but he had a column. He was one of those.
Sterling Torrington.
No. It was one of these renowned columnists in Newsday, but he bought the house. And he did it primarily so that he could watch people drive by.
Oh, wow.
He enjoyed that,
Yeah.
Wow.
And there was this, I mean, have you ever been to the house?
I have. I lived in New York City for 10 years.
You've been to the house, right?
We're both
Oh,
from
yeah.
Long Island.
No.
It's terrifying. It really is. You drive by and you just by driving by, and then your radio just goes, "Get out!" All right, we're going back in the LA now. See ya. Happy Halloween. But
It's funny how the visual of the house itself is the scariest thing about it.
Yeah.
It's
those
the
two
shot with the
windows.
eyes.
Yeah, the
those
windows.
two goddamn
Scariest
windows.
moment in film.
It's terrifying, but just because it was there,
Right.
because there is an icon of realism and that there was some true life story behind it, it made it scarier,
Right.
And like Last House on the Left, that could really happen. Therefore, it could be real.
That shit could really happen.
Exactly.
That shit could really happen.
Copyright that thing.
or I Spit on Your Grave, as crazy and out there as Mira Zarrachi made that movie,
Shit could really happen.
Shit could really happen, you know?
Yeah.
But then after that, and then we started getting into slasher films and upping the body count and then doing different things by the time you got to the 80s, I think the realism just kind of left us a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe, who knows, maybe until the advent of the found footage film with Blair Witch.
It's interesting. We never had a really charming slasher, a charming character slasher. You know, Freddy, you could argue gets charming.
He's about as charming as it gets.
No one really ever based a killer on Ted Bundy with the actual charm that's he's going to get in your pants and then be able to kill you. There's never really
maybe Patrick
American
Bateman.
Psycho?
Yeah, I mean now, but I'm talking about
we
that
park our
key
cars in the
period.
same garage.
Yeah.
You would think that would have been something explored, but it's always the silent killer for the most
What about
part. you know.
Henry? Portrait
I
of
was
a
just gonna say
Serial Killer.
Henry.
Not, not a
he was-
franchise. I mean, that's based on a real killer, though.
But
and I
you
wouldn't
know what?
exactly say he's like sexy. I mean, there's something wrong with
Yeah.
that.
Henry Lee Lucas is not.
Rooker
yeah.
is pretty sexy.
Yeah.
You ask a lot
I don't know.
of Walking Dead fans, and they'll
Chicks
disagree
love the
with you.
Rooker, man.
He is.
Love him.
I have to say, in
I
that
think they
film,
vicariously
it's got
like the
some weird
Rooker because
vibes.
of the Reedus.
They just like them because they're related.
Reedus first. Oh, I can't fuck him. All right, well, I guess I'll just deal with the Rooker. You know?
I was at a party once and Rooker got skunked outside on his way in, and
my God.
like it's not funny enough. He pulls out a gun. And he's just like, "Come here, you fucking skunk!" I'm like, gee, "Oh my God, Rooker's got a gun! Like this is not a good idea." Like,
It's not a party until Rooker has a gun.
yes,
Yeah, there's a photo online. I think Ryan Turek posted it recently of for some reason him holding Ryan upside down into like a water fountain. It's Rooker holding him.
That's fine.
How do you pick
Michael?
up
Yeah, I was
Ryan
going to say,
Rodden?
how the hell did Rooker is a force to be reckoned with, but Ryan Rotten is made of granite.
Yeah,
and
he's
sick, like pure steel.
solid, yeah.
He's like one of those robots from Real Steel. How do you pick that guy
His
up?
I don't doubt
kryptonite is
Rooker
his
doing it.
lungs, though. All you have to do is like punch him in the lung, and it just collapses.
Oh, dude,
That?
too soon?
Oh, man.
that
Too
was
soon?
awful.
So back
was
to
like
the
5 years
Fook
ago.
monster from the Legend of Boggy Creek. If you've ever been to Arkansas, you must seek out this legend, one of the most dull movies with one of the best monsters you'll ever watch.
I was Fred Harry and the Hendersons myself.
yeah, I
They
don't
claim
know
it's
about
true.
that.
They claim it's real.
Have you ever seen There's Nothing Out There?
I have.
Rolf
I love
Kransky's
that
movie,
movie.
There's
He
Nothing Out There.
lives in North Hollywood.
He came to
owns a
Jump
lot-
Cut.
He owns a lot of cats.
That to me is one of the, like you could either say it's one of the best movies with the worst monster or one of the worst movies with
Yeah.
the best monster
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
world.
it was too early for its time.
It was before Scream.
Yeah, because it was
Right,
making
too
it was
self-referential,
self-aware with slasher films before slasher films even knew what they were.
It still has my one of my favorite scenes of all time in a movie when the guy is trapped in the basement. He's the guy that knows all about horror movies and tells everybody, if you're having sex, you're dead. Or if
Yeah.
you go saying, there's nothing out there,
It is.
you're
It
dead.
really
He
is
was us,
Scream before
essentially.
Scream. Like 10 years
the
before
guy
Scream.
the guy's cornered in the basement, and the monster that kind of looks like one of those suction cup creatures back in the
it's
80s.
like it looks like a boglin.
Yeah. And it's just like shuffling. You see the filaments like next to it, and it's shuffling towards the guy. And then the guy has nowhere to turn, and he looks up, and the boom is in the shot. So what does he do? He grabs the boom to swing to safety.
Yeah.
that,
That's
my
great.
friends,
Yeah, that's
is
really
cinema.
good.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That's
I love
realism.
That's funny.
We're talking realism. That's as real as it gets. That shit could happen.
Has anybody seen Return of the Killer Tomatoes?
Yeah.
Of course.
In all her
Yes.
friends.
With all the
And
Pepsi
that-
sponsorships.
Yeah,
and-
that used to be on USA's Up All Night.
That is, I love that show.
Gilbert Gottfried.
What
was the girl's name?
Rhonda Shear.
Yeah, up all night.
USA Up All Night. So, but yeah, that was my.
I wasn't
my
really listening to
self-aware
her.
film.
I was looking at her boobies.
As like everyone else.
Do you remember Captain USA?
Captain USA's
That's-
groovy movies.
That's the first time I saw
That
Friday
was-
the 13th
That
Part
was
3.
how I watched Part 2. That's how I watched all the Friday the 13th movies, because it was this scary looking alcoholic drunk guy that was in his basement. We have a motif here, but his sidekick would be Lefty, which was a guy where it was his sidekick where he would take his cigar and make a face out of his cigar ash, and that would be his sidekick for the entire
That's pretty
episode.
This is the most disturbing thing ever.
If you look up Captain USA's groovy movies on YouTube, you will find God.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
I have to
Cigar burns.
I'm from Virginia, and we used to have, it was Baltimore television, but we had this guy named Captain Chesapeake, which was this old guy, and it was a kid's show. And he used to like have a crab that was a co-host. Most disturbing thing that I watched.
Chesapeake.
He's an old salty sea captain, not like
I'm sorry.
Captain,
Captain Chesapeake.
Captain
That's
Chesapeake.
funny.
So look
Check
it
out
up.
my semen.
He's disturbed. Exactly. That's pretty much it.
So back to Eden Alive by Tobe Hooper. True story. It's kind of based
Whoa,
on a
you said-
serial killer.
Wait, did you say Tobe Hooper?
I'm from New Zealand. We call it Tobe.
Actually, if we're going to go by Chainsaw's edict, it would be Tobe Hooper.
Oh, Tobe
Yes.
Hooper. Yeah.
So
He
bad.
can't be bothered bothered with 2 syllables.
Yeah, I'm pretty bad at it. But that film was basically based on a real serial killer who fed his dead victims to crocodiles.
Was it really?
Mhm, yeah, I mean, loosely. It's a pretty wild
didn't know
film.
that.
I had no clue.
I don't think there's a script
You
to
know
that
what
movie.
You're making me want to see Eaten Alive again.
I think we should all watch it.
You know what other Aussie film I found out is based on a true story? Primeval, which I had no idea.
Is that the giant
I looked it
crocodile
up.
one?
The true story behind it. American news travels to Burundi to capture the deaths of
Burundi?
Yeah, supposedly the 20-foot crocodile who lives in Burundi killed 300 people.
Wow.
That sounds like a bunch of bollocks.
Yeah, because I remember.
Oh, you had to throw the bollocks in
I
there.
saw that in
As
the
Chopper
theater.
said, never get the truth get in the way of a good
But
yarn.
the internet told me it's true.
Well, actually, if you look at almost all the Australian horror films that come out,
Wolf
are almost
Creek?
almost
Yeah.
all of them tend to be, except The Clinic that Brian Collins made me watch last week, with a bunch of pregnant women getting the babies ripped out of them, and then they all run around.
I
and
love
you're like,
that movie.
post-op, you're not running anywhere, lady.
I love Brian Collins, but I'm not watching the.
yeah,
Sorry.
The Clinic I already regret, but yeah, that for certain.
Did you
I
watch
think
Armageddon right afterwards?
If it was Brian Collins' recommendation, he probably has said
I
to
was
chase her.
watching Shocker.
Did he
I was
make
too
you
busy
watch-
watching Shocker back to back.
I
Did
heard
he
Shocker
make
was
you
based on a
watch-
true story.
Finally.
Well, I've heard from a friend who's working with West now that every one of his films was
Yeah.
somehow he always would find
That
something
was
to cling
another
to.
one of my trivia questions from last time was Nightmare on Elm Street was supposedly a true
Multiple
story.
true stories.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the most interesting versions are when somebody takes his childhood event, being scared by the man with the sweater, then he mixes it with an article he read about a Japanese kid. Who,
Something like that.
No, he
who
was
di-
from Thailand.
Yeah, okay, who died in his
who-
sleep and
it
nightmares.
was that he couldn't sleep and he kept saying if he went to sleep, he died. And then he finally did fall asleep and he had a heart attack.
Heart
And
attack,
his-
yeah.
Yeah, they found like a pot of coffee in his closet. Like he was just like constantly
Yeah.
doing whatever he could to stay
And
awake.
The Hills Have Eyes is based on the Sonny Bean
Yeah, the Sonny Bean
family.
Scots.
That's true.
But I
didn't
think
realize-
like all the best horror is based on a true event, even if it's in the filmmakers' lives. Like you talked about like with Hatchet, how you would scare kids with this story about Victor Crowley. So that's coming from a real place for you, at least, you know.
Well, I mean, the making of it, I suppose, but not the actual movie.
I'm
That's
trying to
not based
engage
on
you in this
anything
story
real.
because you're just like falling asleep over there.
Sorry.
I'm trying. I'm
It's been a
trying
long
here.
2 years. I'm sorry.
Clearly.
they're at the tail end of their Holliston tour right now, so that's why Adam's.
Oh,
being
but like
quiet.
even Eli, when he was talking about like the genesis of Cabin Fever, where he got really sick.
Oh,
and
right.
He
Yeah.
got an actual
where he
flesh-eating
yeah.
disease.
And the genesis of that turned into Cabin Fever.
Yeah.
You know?
And even-
Which hearing that, I went, oh God, that could really happen. This shit could really happen.
I even remember interviewing him at the beginning of the Hostel thing where he was talking about how it was a real website
Yep.
and then it got
Oh,
taken
yeah.
down really quick. But it was a real website for a few minutes. So
Wow.
Yeah, but
based
still,
on a true story.
That part's true.
I could believe Hostel could happen.
No, it really is true. But I like it when it's personal stories. Like I don't even need, they're based on a real true story. And then again, we're trying to compare it to this real event. I don't care about that. We care about interesting, imaginative filmmaking and things like Zalowski's Possession is based completely on the guy's divorce, and then he makes it this bigger than life hysterical film about the creation of this creature, which is some manifestation of their loss of their love or whatever. And you're like, that's what I want to see in a movie. I want to see someone take something that hurt and then put it, or whatever, or inspired, and put it in a different context. It doesn't have to be literal, you know?
But I think that, from a writing and a directing standpoint, it's like you would want to be able to tap into the realism of that fear
Right.
to be able to tell your actors, to be able to convey that in the story or how you tell it. It's better than, well, we're going to be on this green screen. There's going to be a lot of spaceships,
Right,
and there's going
right.
to be ghosts that are going to be flying around the
Right.
space. How do you relate to that? Other than, okay, I want the green screen to hit here, the tracking marks there. As a filmmaker, to be able to go like, God, I felt scared, but I was also laughing at the same time. Something
Right.
like that. That's such a real human moment. It's better to be able to cull from real events to be able to go, well, this is how I felt, or this is how, when it happened in real life, this is what happened. And then the actors or whoever is making the film can go, oh, all right. Like it's coming from a grounded place.
Also,
which
like
makes people
discovery
relate.
rather than imitation. So you guys are discovering something new in the process rather than imitating. Oh, but she would have been more like this. You don't, that must be hard. I think those true life biopics, like Ed Gein story or BTK, that must be one of the hardest types of movies to make because you're just kind of trying to imitate. Unlike Zodiac, which just knocked it out of the park.
That might be one of my favorites.
We saw that at the ArcLight,
Yeah,
right?
we all saw it together. Yeah, and that's we mentioned before. It's my favorite.
It's
Fincher movie.
it's an incredible film.
That's your favorite Fincher movie?
Yeah.
Really?
I love
Wow.
it. I love it.
Raw.
I think everybody
The
in it
Game.
is fantastic. And
Do you like the director's cut over the theatrical cut?
there's not much different.
I've only seen the theatrical cut. I've never really watched the director's
I've never
cut.
known. It's just like an extra minute in there.
And you figure out it's Ruffalo.
They make all that awesome packaging and 1 extra minute.
Pretty much, yeah.
But it's Ruffalo, right?
Yeah, Ruffalo.
In the director's cut, it's like Ruffalo goes, "It was me, gotcha."
It was Charles Fleischer going, "Please."
Exactly.
I actually want to mention my favorite based on a true story movie, and it's kind of obscure. It took me forever to figure out what it was, but I saw it on TV when I was really young. It was a 1986 made-for-TV movie called The Deliberate Stranger. And it starred Mark Harmon of Summer School fame.
No way.
And
This was
Sure it
before
wasn't
Summer
the
School.
Ted Bundy one?
Yes.
Is it the Ted Bundy
It's him
story?
playing Ted
Oh,
Bundy.
yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah, it's a great
I've
film.
What's
I'm
like
writing
two
this
movies
down
I haven't
right
seen.
now.
Deliberate Stranger. It was a made-for-TV movie with Mark Harmon, and it never officially came out. I think there's one of those like DVD-R releases of it, like MGM, whatever it is.
It went to theaters in
The
New Zealand,
self-
played for the
I
whole
was
year.
going to say, so
Really?
it's
I didn't know that.
We get all your TV movies theatrical. That's all we get. It's like, yes.
Because it's really long, because I don't know if it was 2 nights or whatever.
Yeah, I think it was.
But I think at the time I saw it, I feel like I must have seen Summer School because I knew I wanted to watch it because he was in it. And I didn't know anything about Ted Bundy at all. And now in retrospect, like of all the serial killers that I've read about, he's to me the scary. Like that dude is pure evil. The fact that he was
Over
this-
Gacy?
Well,
Really?
for me, yeah, because he was this like good-looking guy, that like just like the fact that he did what he did.
Yeah.
And he's a big liar, and then some
Yeah.
of them end up admitting things in their life. Like Bundy would have just gone all the way to the chair,
Yeah.
just lying,
Yeah.
however
Yeah.
it would work for him. He would lie about anything.
That's what terrified me, and seeing Mark Harmon perform it that way, because he would, he did there's a whole scene with him, like with the, the cast, and that's how he would trick girls into his van and stuff like that.
He'd tell them his
But,
own name. He'd say,
yeah.
"Hey, I'm Ted.
Yeah.
Want to
Yeah.
help me with my grocery?" I mean, no shame.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and I mean the amount of times he like escaped,
Yeah,
just like very
2 times escaped from the-
and nobody wanted to believe that he was doing these things, like because he had like a wife, I think maybe. And,
Well, Anne Rule, who's one of the most famous crime novelists, she was working at a suicide prevention hotline in Seattle, and the person who worked next to her the entire time and became one of her best friends in the world was Ted Bundy. And they worked at the suicide prevention line for like 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
And then when that story, and she was a crime novelist writing true crime. And then when finally she found out, she just could not in a million years believe
Yeah.
it. And then she wrote the best book ever on a crime, which is The Stranger Beside Me. And it's one of the best books ever written on the subject.
Wow.
And you're just like, it's amazing that somebody could have that much of a mask.
yeah.
And it's sad. It's sad in the sense that, like, sad for you, man, because you're not even alive. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, if you're interacting in the world like that, you're not even alive. You're
No.
just a
Yeah.
thing,
Did you guys ever see the Ted Bundy movie that came out at maybe 7 or 8 years ago? I think the guy who
Parker
directed
Lewis, the one with Parker Lewis.
no.
the one
not
that
that
the
one.
one that the director of Freeway directed.
Yeah, that one's
Matthew
all right.
Bright.
I think it's something.
Matthew
like
something.
that.
Chicks, go to the IMDb.
What was it called?
But it was
It's
called
just
Ted
called
Bundy.
Bundy. Yeah, Ted
and
Bundy.
it was disturbing as all hell. Like it was done very matter of fact, but it had a very strange, very real tone to it. But sick as hell. Like,
Yeah.
it sounds exactly like that.
Yeah,
where-
it is Matthew Bright.
Woohoo! One for Lynch.
Yeah, our friend Tiffany Shepis pops up in that.
I think
really
people
big.
get more.
No, she gets hit over the head with a tire iron.
Yes,
Tiffany.
but I think she survived. Yeah, she hits him over the head, right?
Something like
She survives
somebody
that
hits
one.
somebody over the head.
There's
with
a tire iron.
Yeah, that was
Involved.
good because that was like a trio of films they made. Like
Yeah, they
that
had
was,
Dahmer, Bundy, and Ed Gein.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Dahmer
but
was
the-
Jeff. Yeah, and I didn't like Dahmer was
With
the,
that Renner
the
guy.
Renner,
Who knows
yeah.
what
The
happened to him?
all-time greatest is the all-time greatest portrayal. Like, I agree with you about that Bundy one. That's a really good one. Brian Dennehy as Ed Gein is one of the great television
Wow, I
performances
totally
in the
forgot
history.
about that.
Like, I remember
Holy
watching that on
crap.
TV and going, "What?" Like Brian Dennehy
And I
just
didn't,
owns
I didn't
it.
see that until after Cocoon. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. The jovial, tubby alien from Cocoon can actually be a killer. You know, like, that's a little strange.
And a good painter. His clown paintings that Johnny Depp commissioned. So creepy. But I think people get more weirded up by, like, they rank the serial. Oh, that's because it's more perverse. Like, oh, you had sex with boys and then you buried them, and you think that somehow gets the headline. But Ted Bundy, the people who can, like, stand beside you and interact with the real world are far scarier.
There's a scene in Deliberate Stranger. I still remember it as a kid watching it on TV, but it's one of the many times after he escapes, and he goes into a sorority house like late at night with nothing but a tree branch or just like a log that he like picks up from the floor. And for a made-for-TV movie and being like 12 or whatever, like he just goes from room to room and just bashes girls' faces in as they're sleeping. and like kills the entire sorority house.
2 of them deserved it. The others are actually just innocents caught in the crossfire.
Terrible.
But 2 of them were terrible.
But I mean, I remember
And this was a TV movie?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. and
So
then
I would love
after-
the commercial break. It's like,
my
brought to you
God.
by Cool Whip.
And I mean, that's the thing is like I saw it and was disturbed by it, but then like when I because I think at the end there was like one of those things like, and you know what happened after the fact, and that's when I realized, holy shit, this is a true story. Like this actually happened, and so yeah, I always have that.
Do you know if I always wondered about Silence of the Lambs, if that was the book coming somewhat as a true story because Ted Bundy was used in that same way to catch the Green River Killer, or was at least trying to at one point, and they were working with him, and he was lying and trying to, get his sentence. Silence is like an amalgamation of all those.
Yeah,
things.
because he
There is
uses
a
the
Ted Bundy
cast to
scene.
get them into
Kind of
the
a greatest
van.
hits.
Yeah, there is an Ed Gein
The
connection
woman
with the
suit
woman
is
suit.
in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to Holliston.
Excellent segue.
No, I do want to. I do want to
king
actually
of those,
hear from
segues.
Adam how this is. What is personal about it? Like where that comes from? Because I'm curious.
Well, I mean, everything about it. It's my real life story, and even some of the most ridiculous storylines that happen on the show, such as last season there was an episode where Joe and I wind up getting skunked and having to sit in the tub, and our girlfriends.
I really wish that wasn't true.
Our girlfriends go to find vinegar, and there is no vinegar because it's late at night, and they end up buying a bunch of douche, and then the cops in real life, it was my dogs that got skunked, and my parents went, this is on Cape Cod in the middle of the night, the supermarkets aren't open that late, so they went to Cumberland Farms, and there was no vinegar, but there was feminine wash, and so my mom was like, we'll just get all this, there's vinegar in it, and we'll use this. And they didn't get detained by the police, but they did get questioned because they were trying to find a brothel. And it was like, so wait, like, where are you going in the middle of the night with like 12 cases of douche? So even that stuff is real. But at the core of it, I mean, it's about the struggle to become a horror movie filmmaker. And that stuff, I mean, it's so universal, but I think the love story stuff is also universal. I mean, it took me a decade probably to get over my first love. I mean, it was a horrible, horrible experience. And what's been interesting about the show is when it premiered, we didn't know how people were going to react because it's a sitcom, the laugh track, or like horror fans going to be into it.
Self-referential too, which is hard for some people.
Yeah, and the reaction was amazing. And what people reacted to the most was the love story, was the fact that horror fans are being portrayed as real people with feelings and dealing with heartbreak and disenchantment and having the door slammed in your face. And I mean, because the fan mail that we would get was so vastly different. Like with the movies, it's always, I love the movie, this is my favorite scene, whatever. But with this, it was like thank you letters. And it was like, thank you for portraying us like real human beings. And this is my story. Like the girl that wanted to be the ballerina, because the 4 main cast members, we read every letter that we get. And lots of personal stories about the guy that the girl couldn't get over, or which
again we thought was always going to be, dude, I love Horace Pinker. Oh my God, you hung out with Candyman. We thought it was going to be all horror centric, and then it ended up being all these personal stories. Which to us, we were going, well, this is more for us. At least we're happy that these elements are in there. We're hoping that would reach an audience, and then shockingly, it was the personal stories that got to people more than
like
the
you
horror.
connected beyond the convention handshake.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
you found a way to get beyond.
That's
that.
exactly it.
That's what makes it a show. You can have all these horror references and guest stars and exploding heads and all that other stuff, but that doesn't make a series. When you have characters that people are really actually vested in, like our Christmas special that we did, so many people, the response was that they were like in tears at the end of it, and it was like, we have a show now, like it's working, and you can really see the difference between season 1 and season 2, the confidence level that happened with the cast. Because when we were first doing it, I was scared shitless. I was like, this could be the end. Like that, this is like, and this was the thing I came here to do. This is all I ever wanted to do, was this show. And it took 13 years to finally get it made the right way. And I was like, I don't know if people are going to like this. I don't know if they're going to like it, especially because once you start to have some more and more success, it's not cool to like anything you do anymore. And you see this all the time with everybody. It's like they're waiting to knock you down. It's like, come on, make something that sucks. Yeah, we got him. This one sucks. So I was like, this could be it. And you can see, I think, when you watch the first season that not that we're nervous. We're not nervous in front of the camera. We're not nervous with our characters, but you could tell there was this uncertainty of like, is this going to be accepted? And now having all that feedback and the fact that the show's working, now it's like, wow, we can make the show that we really want to make and have these characters. And it's okay to have a sentimental moment, and it's okay to have some heart, and people are on board with it. But all the characters, the reason why we retained our first names, like Joe is Joe and Laura is Laura and Corey's Corey, I mean, they've been adjusted for comedy's sake, of course. And
They have?
to some extent, you actually became more like your character.
I became
you weren't that
immensely more
cheap.
cheap as we go on. I'm like, Joe, my character's got something going here. He's a smart son of a bitch. I'm not going to eat lunch every day. I will save $50 a week. It's amazing.
The only one who's really actually playing something that is so not them, shockingly enough, is Dee Snider. Because he's nothing like that. And he was apprehensive. When I explained the character to him, he was like, it's funny and I would love to do this, but you're having me dress up in those clothes again and act like that. And that's what people think I'm like. And it took me 20 years to finally start erasing that stigma. And now I'm going to go and do it again. And I'm like, yeah, but you own it and you're making fun of it and nobody can and again, in season 2, you can totally see how much fun he's having with it now because he's making fun of that.
And his costumes have gotten even more crazy, which allows him to go, okay, there's a separation between the Dee Snider, Twisted Sister era and Lance Rocket.
Right.
One of my my first job with Fangoria was I was Dee Snider. I was one of the producers on Fangoria Radio.
Oh, I love that show
I worked
so
with
much.
Dee. Well, you guys were both on it while I was one of the producers. We had both of you guys on at various times, and you were in the studio. I remember.
Yeah, I did mine from Comic-Con. Yeah,
I did one at a FangoCon. This is my favorite story.
I remember that because we got
Was
really
it the
drunk
Jersey?
beforehand.
Jersey or LA?
It was Jersey.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Secaucus.
Yes, and so
hey, what's wrong with Secaucus?
Nice. It's a lovely sports complex.
it was the end of the competition to be the next Scream Queen.
Yes.
And so there were 3 girls and they were going to win a walk-on role in a horror movie and $10,000 or whatever it was. And I got thrown into this where they're like, you're going to be the judge who picks the final one. And I'm like, I haven't, no offense, but like, I don't have Fangoria Radio. I've never even heard the show. I don't know what I'm like. And I felt so guilty. I'm like, I can't pick a winner. They're like, yeah, you can. And so there's 3 girls and they do their thing. And I ended up picking a winner. And because one of them dressed like a zombie, one of them was really slutty. And then one of them, you just wanted to buy her ice cream. And I'm like, you're the Scream Queen because the other 2, you're dead. Like you're going to survive.
Do you like Rocky Road?
And, she starts crying. She's so excited. They put a crown on her. And Dee goes, so a working Hollywood director just chose you and picked you. What do you have to say? And she goes, Adam Green, you're so much shorter than I thought you would be.
Nice.
Yeah. Wow. So that's the thanks that I got.
You ripped
for
the
that.
crown from her head at that point?
I beat her with it. I was just like, I am not short.
Turned her into murder set pieces. Oh.
Tom Cruise is shorter than
Pulling out
me.
the Joe film.
Sorry.
Again, another one I haven't seen.
Murder set
You've never
pieces?
seen murder set pieces after
No,
all that controversy?
the post-production
We were
supervisor.
at war
You didn't
with
direct
that guy
that.
on
I know.
Fangoria Radio
Well, yeah,
at
he-
war because
he-
Dee went after him, calling him a Nazi on air, and then
Well,
he launched
for
back.
good
I
reason.
know,
But then
the
what he
shoe
said
fits a
about
little,
Debbie
but-
Rochon was just absolutely
Yeah.
uncalled for.
Yeah,
And
it went back.
look,
and
I mean,
forth.
some people, they try to get noticed however they can, and that's sometimes you lose.
What did
has
he
a
do to
new
Debbie
film coming
Rochon?
out.
She's so sweet.
He attacked her on the show.
I
He
like
said
her.
awful.
I still have a
horrible
crush on
things.
her.
I
She's just so
worked
sexy.
with her on Terra
Crazy.
Firma, and it was just like,
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy how
I
sexy
love
she
you,
is.
Debbie.
And she's had a
Rochon.
tough road, man, with
Her
the brain
desk-
cancer and the
Yeah,
whole
that she
thing.
was saying
Her
recently.
desk was next to mine for 5 years, so right next. So yeah, good times. But so I first met Dee when I was working on the show, and I was so nervous coming in because it's one thing if you're working with the normal Fango crew. It's Tony Timpone and Mike and all of them.
Here's another master of horror. Let's hear it for Adam Simon. It's Green.
Whatever.
hey, Adam, do you like my suit? Oh, which one? The gray or the gray?
He's introduced me
He
to
always
the
wears
wrong
the
name so many
Ray-Bans with
times.
the wraparound. So yeah, it's just awesome. My
Casual
Tony Timpone
Timpone.
story. My very first day working at Fangoria, Saw 4 had just come out, and we were in a writer's meeting, and he walks in and he goes, Saw 4 with Shawnee Smith. There's an autopsy. And it was just
That's awesome.
But I love Tony. But anyway, it's all of them. But the one that I was like totally nervous about working with was Dee. And Dee ended up being like one of the nicest people I'd
He's
ever
great.
worked with. I always told him, I was like, before him, I was a professor. And compared to working with all of the other professors who would stab me any chance they got just to like get that, little tenure boost over somebody else, he was like so wonderful. I just love that man. So,
Such
and
a
then
genuine guy.
And then when I see him on the show, I'm like, that's not D.
Yeah.
But then again, I have another question. So, the band Guar, they're good friends of mine. Does Odorous' costume smell as bad as it did a
Bag of dicks.
It did. However, he made a new one for season 2 that is only used on Holliston. So it's 2 days of shooting. It already smells.
Say, 3 days in, and we're like, oh my God, what the hell smells like old man's balls?
Yeah.
And we're just walking by it, and Odorous is sitting there, and he put a fan outside the hall so that it would blow out onto people. So I went in there and just had a 30-second fart, and I just kind of like...
He's actually very self-conscious about it, though, because he felt bad. And but what's he going to do? He tours in that thing. But so he made a new costume just for season 2. So you'll notice there is a little bit of a difference between Odorous in season 1 and season 2. He looks much better in season 2, actually. But
it's kind of like the difference between Freddy in part 2 and then Freddy in part 3.
Oh,
there's
okay.
There's a slight difference.
Up.
It's a little darker. Like if you notice, he did a little more airbrushing on it. It just has a little more defined nature to it. It looks awesome.
Which version did he wear to Monster Palooza when we did that?
That was season 2, wasn't it?
That was the season 2 one.
So it wasn't too stinky.
I thought it was, but that's
no, you don't know.
No.
All right,
you would know. You can't get it out of your nostrils.
I thought you subliminally put it in my head because I was standing next to him and I'm like, I think he stinks. I'm not sure, but then again, I can't stop staring at the dog.
They actually use odors on crime scenes when people are passed out. They have him walk by them. And, it's better than smelling salts. Actually,
well, I directed their Zombies March video a couple of years ago.
Did you really?
Yeah, that was. I
had no clue.
co-directed it with my husband Dave.
Oh, that's great.
Holy crap! So I did that a couple of years ago.
You got that job. God damn you!
I did. It was an awesome job. We had like over 100 zombies in it. It was such a fun time. But anyway, so the whole time we were doing that, he and the whole band would just be like, yeah, we're sorry, we smell. We're sorry. And they actually had something that they would wipe out the inside of the costumes with at the end of the day, but it did nothing.
No, it
They're
does nothing.
so nice. Like the few times that we've like hung out backstage with them and like when they come to LA or we've done like Ventura, you would never in a million years guess that those are the same guys that go on stage and cut off Obama's head and spray the crowd with like blue cum. They're just so genuinely nice and cordial. They're like, hey man, would you like an orange juice? I'm like, oh, thank you, Flatus. It's like,
I lived in Richmond for a year when I was working on my PhD, and I actually lived next to the drummer. He runs a flower shop in Richmond. You would see him out mowing his lawn. He would invite us over. His wife's Italian. They'd invite us over for pasta.
His wife does the merch when they're on tour and stuff. They're great
Wonderful
people. Great people. And Odorous just auctioned off his mask from season 1 that he wore on tour for 4 years for my Boston Strong benefit that I was doing last week. And it went for like, I think $1,500, like whoever won it. But I mean,
my luggage kid will never smell the same.
Yeah, because he had to put it in his bag at one point. But just you walked into the Worcester Palladium and all of this stuff from like Wes Craven and John Carpenter, Chris Columbus, and like all this stuff is laid out and people are like doing the silent auction and bidding on it. You could smell that mask from the moment you walked in. And like I recognize it because I'm like, there it is.
Other people smells like home.
Smells like feet. And like, yeah, that's Odorous.
4 days of my life on set. Wow. That's all I smelled.
Now, was Odorous like a tough, like, was it a tough sell to get? I mean, because they, Guar is a very theatrical type of band. So, getting them to do stuff, I imagine wouldn't be that difficult. But to get him to star on the show with you guys was
easy. It was really easy.
Yeah?
It was hard though, because throughout the years, there was, whether it was a major network, another cable network, like the show had almost happened so many times. And through the development process, it would just start to completely unravel and become something that I didn't want. They would be like, well, what's great about this is like, it's like a traditional sitcom. And then rather than saying, but it's cool because it's not like one because you're doing all this other stuff, they would try to homogenize it and make it like other stuff. So the imaginary alien friend in the closet was always one of the first things that they'd hone in on to be like, we got to get rid of that. I'm like, why? They're like, because nobody will get that. Nobody will be able to hang with that. I'm like, yeah, they will though. You just got to do this. Anything. So we sat down with him and I pitched him what it was. And he just stopped me after like 5 minutes into the pitch. And he was like, wait, you want Odorous to be on a sitcom? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, it's a sitcom. And I'm like, yeah, the laugh track, the whole thing. And he was like, yes. He's like, I can't believe, and to this day he still says it's the best thing that he's ever been a part of. It's like it's so funny because the 4 main sort of core cast, we see each other all the time. He is so emotional about this show. Like whenever we have an event or we see him, he's like a wreck when we have to say goodbye. Like he can't, like especially with like Corey and Laura, like he loves those girls. I mean,
I think we're ruining his rep here.
I know, right?
Dave.
Well, that's Dave, not Otis, but he
They're
is.
two different people.
They're two different people, and he does talk about himself in the third person. He'll be like, "Well, Otis wouldn't do," but he and the fact that he trusts me to write for him and he's never felt the need to change something or whatever.
No, every time you've submitted a script, like think maybe there's a possibility that doesn't sound Otis-esque. Never came back with any notes at all.
No, but I mean, I've been
I think
a fan
he wanted
for
more
14 years.
dick jokes or something like that.
So he wants a much bigger part. And the thing is, if we do a season 3, he has a really big thing that happens with him.
Oh,
and this season, episode 9, he actually moves out because.
Oh, dude.
It's
Spoiler.
fine. It's because he feels like I take him for granted, and I'm always asking him for advice, but he never gets advice from me, and so
He packs up, takes his Spooky Dan Bear with him, and heads out.
yes, he's
that.
got a teddy bear called Spooky Dan Bear that looks like Spooky Dan.
That is awesome.
Amazing.
We're hoping those fly off the shelves during Christmas.
The in jokes that we get away with on this thing, because it's like, we showed the show last year in Holliston, Massachusetts, and it was. God, it's got to be 40% elderly people because it was free. So there's nothing else to do in Holliston. So they went, and I'm like, this is gonna bomb. And like, they're laughing at Horace Pinker the hamster. They're laughing, and they don't know what the reference is. It's just a funny name, and that's where I think it works. Like, if you get it, it's one little extra thing for you where you're like, oh, that's that. But we don't.
It's like
we
watching
don't force the references. We try to. It's just organically the way the characters would speak.
Yeah, it's like Big Bang Theory. It's like you don't need to know, like, oh, he's talking funny. Who's this Albert Einstein guy?
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter. It's a funny name.
Yeah, my dad watches Big Bang Theory and laughs. And like sometimes if I'm with him, I'll stop. I'll be like, do you know what he was just talking about? And he's like, no. And he's like, I don't care. He's like, I like the characters.
It's funny word. So I
It's
guess
a
it
funny
works.
word.
Did you guys, through the development process before it came to FEARnet, did you always need to stay attached to be in the show? Like, is that part of the experience of making the show, as being on camera?
Back in 2003, originally, the first thing, this was when it was at UPN and Touchstone, Disney was the studio. The first thing they said was like, just so you know, like you can write it and create it, but like you are not directing this, you can't be in it. And because I was in the movie and I directed the movie, like Coffee and Donuts, that it was based on. And I was like, okay, I get it. And then one of the next times it was developed, it started with the network that was trying to do it, wanting, because of these shorts that Joe and I did for Fright Fest, they wanted to do a show with us in it. And then I sort of pitched this idea. And at that one, it couldn't be horror. We needed to be two guys who do a podcast. Yep. And I'm like, well, that's okay.
And by the way, you can't actually write it. It has to be all.
Oh yeah, that's a whole nother story. But but with FEARnet, yeah, that was really where it started. Was Peter Block saying, he needs to figure out his first show. He doesn't want to do what everyone thinks he's going to do, which is like a X-Files or a Tales from the Crypt. He's like, I want to come out with something that nobody would expect. And I'm like, what about a sitcom? And he's like, would you and Joe be in it? And I was like, yeah.
That was at the Reaper Awards.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
And it just works. It's like neither one of us is going to start going out on auditions or like doing like this whole thing. But like for this, just playing ourselves, it just works. And then Corey and Laura playing themselves, and they've been attached for. They were attached for at least 3 years before the FEARnet thing happened, because we were already workshopping it, and I had scripts and we were like testing it out, and it all just fit. And like, thankfully, when the moment came, because it was a deal breaker for me, if they had gotten rid of Corey or Laura, we weren't going to do the show. We were just going to say, then forget it. And thankfully they said, well, let's do a table read. We just want to meet them and hear them. And you can't not love them. It's impossible. Mm-hmm. And we did this table read, and they left, and instantly they were like, we have a show. And that was it. So thank God, because that would have sucked if they were like, well, we got to get rid of one of them. We want to see some other people, because then I would have walked. I definitely would have left.
Did you, and as directors, are you learning a lot about your empathy towards actors and just that relationship by acting, or are you just having too much fun to even?
No, absolutely. I mean, I could speak for you as well. I mean, we've acted before in other people's stuff. And I think one of the like crucial elements of being a director, aside from knowing how to tell a story, know how to use the camera, and as a director, you should know every facet of it. And one of those elements, obviously, is acting. And a lot of times directors don't worry about that. They just think, I'm casting you, you're going to do your job. Just let me worry about the overall arc and how the shot's done, but you have such a bigger appreciation for what it's like to be on that other side of the screen or that side of the camera when you're actually in the shit.
But especially with this, because it's like a play. It's performed, like we'll do 12 pages in a take, and like so you like we do months of rehearsals, and you're performing in front of a small group of people because you need the laugh track in order to know how to pause and pace out your jokes. So that part of it is really great, because I used to do theater back in like high school and college, and like to get to do that again is really fun. Plus sitcom acting is very different than feature acting, because it's this heightened, slightly bigger, larger than, like, you wouldn't normally act like that in a movie.
You're hitting rhythms and
It's not naturalistic dialogue. Yeah, it's much more.
But what we get to bring to it as directors, the best sort of story I can tell for that was in the Christmas special, the end of the Christmas special, there's this confrontation between Corey English and I. And there was, in the script, there was like a few lines of dialogue. And then I said the night before, I'm like, look, I'm not going to say those lines. I don't know what I'm going to say. I want to improv this whole thing so that it's real and that it's honest. So we're just going to roll, and I don't know what I'm going to say, and that's it. But that way she couldn't be prepared for what was going to come out of my mouth. I wasn't prepared. So when you see that scene, it's all improv. It's all real. It's all coming out. And I'm bawling and she's bawling and the boom operator's crying and everybody. And when it was done, I was like, that was awesome. And then that was one of the things that like we started, there was just sort of going back and forth between the network and us. Like, is this too emotional for this network? This isn't really our brand. This isn't what, like, are people going to hang with this? And lo and behold, it was everybody's like favorite scene because they didn't expect it. It was honest. And I think Joe says this all the time, doing comedy, even if it's absurdist sitcom Holliston stuff, it's finding the truth in what it is and just being real and honest. And that's what's going to make it funny. If you like the episode where I screw up at the horror convention, I get too close to Daniel Harris, I say all the wrong things. I do like, now in the script, when I'm writing it, I'm just basically writing what's happened to me. Like what's some, could the Adam character do everything wrong at a convention?
Right.
And
boy, do you ever.
But if I played it like all big and like, I'm doing, it wouldn't have been funny. But the fact that it's played so sincerely that you don't realize that you're talking too close, your interface, you're naming the wrong movies, you're doing like everything wrong. I think that's where it starts to work.
Right.
And just the fact that the four main casts are such good friends, the chemistry was already there. So there's a comfort level there because it's a lot of kissing, having to be naked in front of each other a lot. And the fact that we're all friends makes that a lot
Not a bad
easier.
gig. Not a bad gig at all.
When they play, do they only play, because I had, for the first season, I had FEARnet, and this season I don't have FEARnet on my TV. Is it possible to watch them online?
Yeah.
Yes, it will be.
Okay.
I'm the one.
That wasn't a plug, so I really genuinely am curious.
No, it airs Tuesday nights on FEARnet, and then the next day it goes to FEARnet on demand, because a lot of people might not have the actual network where you can just click through like Comedy Central or whatever, but it's on demand. And then on every Thursday, it is on fearnet.com for 1 week.
Oh, cool.
And then like the new episode will replace it. But very soon it'll also on that Thursday be on iTunes and I think Amazon and like other places.
Right, so if you miss it.
So yeah, it's coming. And it's just great because that's what people are learning about FEARnet. Like a lot of people watched it on Hulu and then started trying to get FEARnet and find it because they don't want to wait for the next season. And that's really how you do it as a network. You like all the major networks do that. They put the shows out there so people can learn what they have to offer. And I just think FEARnet, like the potential there is so big, because it started out just showing old horror movies, and then it's like, well, let's encompass all of horror. Let's do different things. The fact that this sitcom is their flagship show and that it's working is but that they stood by it. They didn't panic. We thought this was going to be a polarizing thing at first. You were either going to get it or you weren't. And thankfully it was 90% get it and 10% I don't, but they never wavered. They never were scared. We were more nervous than they were. So yeah.
Yeah, we say it on this show a lot, like that genre shouldn't be generic. Like we shouldn't be making that word mean generic, and we should be trying lots of different. We always kind of talk about how, like, the kind of Coscarelli voice and those kind of movies that were happening in the 80s just seemed so than now.
Well, like the Coscarelli voice that's even like prevalent now.
Yeah.
You look at
Totally.
Bubba Hotep or John dies at the end. It's like that. You cannot classify any one of his movies.
No.
Maybe the Phantasm films, but that's
the last night on Netflix, I swear, John Dies at the End was under gory supernatural films. And I just looked at it, really? Gory supernatural?
It's because of the
gory,
execs.
but yeah.
It's the execs, though, who think they have it figured out. Like, oh, we want to do a genre movie, so it needs to be like this, and that.
Right.
And they don't understand that as genre fans, like, if somebody can throw us something new, like, awesome. Like, maybe it's not going to work, but like, great. Everyone's going to be excited. But the problem is, you look statistically, it's the remakes that make all the money. It's the it's sequels and it's hard. But this has been really special because it's also crossed over. Like, we did a convention in Cincinnati, and a lot of the people, like, we signed for, what was that one? 7.5 hours?
That was 7, and then the last one was
8. Yeah, 7.5 hours straight, no break, no anything. Like, the line just did not stop. And there were so many people that came through that, you get your few moments to talk to them, and they're like, this is really crazy. All these people walking around dressed up in blood. And I'm like, I've never been to a horror convention. Like, I don't like horror. And it's like, so what are you doing here? They're like, I just love this show. And
that's pretty cool.
But then they came and they brought their family to a horror convention, and they spent the whole day, and they ended up having a great time. And then, like, now they're into it. And it's it's a great gateway. Yep. And it's also, I think, helping some horror fans cope with their softer side, because they don't want to admit. They'll be like, dude, yeah, I mean, it was awesome when Candyman was on it, man. But man, I cried in the Christmas special. It was really
we need t-shirts to say, like, horror fans cry too, man.
Yes.
It's funny. It's funny what you connect to, because my favorite was, I think it was the first episode, you drinking too much coffee, and for some reason, even though that might seem to some people be like a throwaway scene, I think it was like the thing I remembered most about the scene.
That was in the
You want to
movie.
talk about truth?
Well, because you
really drank all that coffee.
11 cups, 11 cups, and then we could have easily changed that over to decaf. But I was like, no, man, I'm going method.
Yeah, there's something about that.
He was
practically
so sick.
Well,
I
probably
was
people on
saying.
film sets, you really identify with somebody having to drink that much or smoke that much in a long day, and how everyone's just rattled by
I
the end.
practically ruined the next day because I was just like, I was like Dennis Leary on a really bad
moment.
day.
The potato chips scene in the Tony Todd thing, where I have to keep eating potato chips. Like, I had to eat bags and bags of potato chips, and I had to swallow it. I couldn't spit it out. Like, I had, and I'd been
There
on
would be these cups of like half-chewed matzo ball looking things that would probably turn into critters at any moment. It was so
I had been on
gross.
such a strict, because I mean, I lost 25 pounds for the first season and gotten to just like incredible shape, and so did he. And then I hadn't eaten potato chips in months, and then to sit there and eat bags of it, I was so
grease.
sick the next day. Awful.
Was
Terrible.
getting in shape something the network wanted from you, or was that just
No,
something
that
you
was
guys
just
that
for
was
us.
us.
to be on camera?
It was just a comfort level thing, because we'll be the first person to go like, oh God, I look like George Lucas. Look at my double chin. Good God, man. But if we could eradicate that element of it, and we're not focused on
How you look, right.
how normally fat we look. Sorry, I'm speaking for both of us here. Or maybe I'm just speaking more for Adam. But
I've already
if
put
we
10
could
pounds back on since we wrapped season 2. So
take that off, and we can focus on everything else. It just made it easier for us. And the girls,
Less self-conscious.
yeah, exactly. It was just a comfort level.
it was also camaraderie too, because the cast would train together. Like, we had a personal trainer on season 2, and like we would
did?
rehearse, and then we would train.
You want to call him that?
Well, that's what he's called.
He
Fancy.
was personable, and we did do some training.
We
But
did
when
a
you
lot of
have
training.
when you have a trainer who's like, all right, give me some abs, as he's sitting there with the biggest frappuccino I've ever seen in my life.
He didn't work out with us, but I mean, that one night that we did that 3-mile run was really awesome.
If you were
Like,
lucky enough to be driving down Chandler Boulevard one night in about July of last year, you would have seen the entire cast of Holliston looking like, I mean, it was devastating. We're like, oh God, we're gonna die.
It took 3 miles.
yeah, we did
Wow.
3 miles, and
That's a half marathon. It's a 5K.
yeah,
There you go.
we had worked up to that, but then it was like
About
we were
2.9
doing
more K than I've ever done in my life. So
insanity and all this other stuff. You know, when that one poster came out of us like naked on it, like everyone's like, "Oh, what is this? Completely photoshopped or whatever?" And it's like, yeah, of course it was touched up or whatever, but like that, no, like we
That was
really
us.
like that was us. And
and when your mom says like, "Oh, Joey, I heard of this thing called Photoshop. Nice try." I'm like, "Screw you, mom."
yeah, yeah, but that was if there were a lot of reasons for that, I guess. But it's like you do just have to. I mean, but I do like the fact that we do just look like real people for the most part. It's like that was a comfort level thing, but like we didn't want the show to be super good looking people. It's just average regular people, and I think that
You could say it, average
makes
Joes. It's all right.
Average Joes,
Go ahead.
yeah.
I'm used to it.
But I mean, well, then I don't know how you get prettier than than Corey and Laura, though. I know they're just.
We just wanted to keep up with them, basically.
Yeah.
So if to get a third season, how do you? I mean, not are you going to get one, but how could that happen? Like, do you guys have? Does the show have to reach a certain level? Does it need to get beyond where it is now? Like, how does that happen? So people can help you.
It's really just based on how much noise the fans make, because FEARnet is not Nielsen rated yet, and that's how we got the second season so fast. I mean, the morning after the second episode aired, the reviews were so positive, the reaction was so positive, because we only did 6 episodes the first season. They were like, okay, it's working, let's keep going, let's do it. And they ordered another 10 plus the hour Christmas special. This time around, I don't expect us to hear anything that quick. Normally,
especially since they know about what's going on with everybody too.
Yeah, because everyone's busy. Like Corey's gonna have a baby next week, and that's gonna take up a lot of time, obviously, for a while. And Joe's got a movie called Everly that's starting soon. I'm shooting a movie called Digging Up the Marrow right now. So that was the one thing we sort of promised when we did this, is that this would not become like, what if the show goes 10 years? That doesn't mean we're not going to make movies for 10 years. So it's like we do a season, we go do our movie stuff. So there's going to be a break, I think, before there's a third season. Doesn't mean that's going to be that big. But I mean, I can tell you that there's already been phone calls about a third season just based on the reaction last night. And it doesn't mean it's been ordered yet. Cool. But the reactions to the premiere last night were so strong that at least the first phone call was lobbied from the important person who it needs to come from. So that's it's a good sign.
And it wasn't get canceled, so that's a good sign.
Yeah.
It wasn't, sorry guys, you're canceled. So and then the other thing too is like, it's a unique situation where like the network licenses the show from Ariscope. So it's there's so many different ways for a show to live on now.
Right.
So you never know what's going to happen. But really, it's, to answer your question, it's the fans speaking up. And the great thing about these fans is it's not just it's not simple stuff. They really speak up. Like if they write to like the FEARnet like Facebook or like what, like they write a very passionate letter like, thank you for this show, this is why I like the show, and then we get the majority of it, but we'll share it with them and be like, this is what we're getting, the good or the bad. But I mean, very few bad, thankfully. I mean, it's the
unless you haven't shown us any of those, or
no, it's there was a couple like with season 1 where it's like Adam and Joe can't act. And it's like, well, we're not even acting.
Did they see that coffee scene? I'll stand by that scene.
Thank you, sir.
But we thought that was going to be all of it in season 1 because this was not in the cards. This wasn't supposed to happen. So it's been great that people are willing to open their minds a little bit. And I think horror fans get that. And also, I mean, I say this a lot, but if anybody knows what it's like to be disenchanted, to feel like an outsider, to not get the girl, to not get the guy, to feel like you're going nowhere and want to be more than where you're at, it's us. And that's why we're a culture. More so than, we're not just like fans of a genre, like it is a living, breathing culture. And I think that's what this show taps into.
You don't have too many podcasts based on romantic comedies.
Nope.
Just saying.
It's true.
But to go off of what Adam's saying, I mean, for me personally, the show has been therapy. It's been a catharsis. It's been a savior. You know, like if I didn't have the last season of Holliston, I don't know where I would be. Probably in a ditch somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised. But it's there is so much that we're tapping into, like on a personal level, and just to have a creative outlet like that, where you're getting, at least on the day, you're getting an instant response from somebody like, "Hey, that joke worked," or whether it's putting a show like that, because comedy is so great because it's not like you can sit there and go like, "Ooh, I really liked what you did with that," that very somber art film. You don't get a real response out of something like Spiral, no offense, but that's, it's a different movie than, say, Hatchet, or sitting in a crowd like we did on Monday with the premiere and hearing the laughter. It's such a gratifying experience. And it's so nice as someone who likes to put in quotes, an artist, to actually have that kind of response. Horror and comedy get those responses. And it's addictive.
It's funny, though, you said it's like therapy. I actually... It sent me to therapy. I actually had to get a therapist because I mean, for a number of reasons. I have a problem with working too much. But
you got to stop that, dude.
Yeah, I know, right? But
don't we have a podcast to do in a couple days?
But by reliving this time in my life, and like for all intents and purposes, my life worked out fantastic. I'm very happy. But by reliving that stuff and having to, when you write it, it's funny and everything's for comedy's sake, and you do the table read and you practice and whatever. But then when you actually shoot and you're really in the moment and you're really feeling like that again, you can't just shake it off and just go home and forget what you just drudged up about how horrible you felt at that time. And it was really, really messing with me, to the point sometimes on set, like these guys would pull me aside because the story, I think we might have told this on the commentary of the DVD, but in the pilot episode, I see Corey again for the first time in 3 years, and I think she came back to town to be with me, but then I meet her boyfriend, who's gorgeous and 6'4", and he's a doctor, and it's like everything I'm never going to be. Kevin. And as we're talking, I'm trying to tell her that I did move on and I have a girlfriend, even though I don't, and I'm so happy, and someday I'm going to marry a girl and it's not going to be her. And it was all funny on the page, but if you watch up closely, especially of the Blu-ray, you can see I'm crying. Like there's tears in my eyes. And then we would say cut, and everybody's laughing behind the monitors and the producers and the network, like, that was great, do it again. And I'm dying on set because I didn't want to cry and I didn't mean to cry and I didn't know what, and I couldn't, maybe because I don't do this every day for a living to drudge that type of shit up as an actor. Like normally it's, silly little whatever. I had a really hard time with that. And so I did actually, my wife was so happy. I did actually start talking to somebody about it. And now I have learned how to turn it on and turn it off a little bit better. Because you don't want to numb yourself from those feelings, because that's where you write from. But you, at the same time, like, you also don't want to make yourself miserable, but trying to pretend about what it felt like to be so in love and so rejected. And every one of us has been there. I'm sure you guys have your own stories, and nothing in the world hurts worse.
I think I just saw a tear in Rob's eye.
Everybody just looked at each other like, oh.
There is no pain worse than that. And my grandmother, I can't remember what interview I just said this in, so I forgive me if it was on a podcast here, but my grandmother, I remember when it was happening, because I couldn't eat and I had like stomach ulcers, and like it was awful. It was like, my grandmother said, sometimes it would be better if the person died. And she didn't mean that like, I hope this girl dies. She meant because then it wasn't their choice to not be with you anymore.
It's easier in a way.
Because
they
easier
just
out. They can't be here anymore. But to know that they're still on the planet and they just don't want you, like that. And like, some of the lines that Corey says to my character in the show, like, I love you, I just not like that. Or in the Christmas special, after we sleep together again and I'm all excited, and then she's trying to get out as fast as she can because she realizes she made a mistake. And I say, well, let me drive you home. I'd love to see your parents again. And she turns and goes, my parents don't need to see you, Adam. And it's like, on the page, it never even occurred to me how biting that was. But on set, it was just like, bam. And like,
it was almost like watching you get a punch in the face. It was awful. Awful. But again, I don't want to make it seem like it's Dawson's Creek or something. I mean, the show's very funny, and it's it's a fun show.
You're just saying, don't go full Dostoevsky.
Exactly.
Turn it on and off, but if you go full, you'll die sad and crazy.
But I think what will hopefully keep it going is the fact that there is a lot of heart behind it, and I think that that's what people have gravitated to, whether they even realize it or not. Like, it's funny, but there's something else about it where you want to know what's going to happen with these people. So we'll see what happens, or maybe we'll get canceled and or not do anymore. I don't know, but
it's funny because you guys are really you do put yourself out there. Even hearing you talk about it now, it enriches it in a way which is interesting. But like, I always promised I would briefly say this before we do news. If you were ever on a podcast of mine again, I was going to mention this, that everything I have done since living in LA, horror-wise, every single thing, including opening Jump Gut Cafe, all comes back to Adam. A brief flitting conversation probably, but like you came on a show called This Week in Movies, I think it was called, and I had just started at this network, had just moved to LA, and I was producing it, and I hated the show beyond anything I've ever hated. The two hosts were terrible. Everything
the
about
guests were terrible.
Everything about it was pretty boring. And then you were the guest one week, and I was just like, oh yeah, phoning in this job, and me and you were back before you went on, and we talked for like, I was just producing a show backstage, and we probably I felt like we talked for about an hour, and I remember, and then you went on, and I just thought to myself, man, that was easily the most interesting hour of conversation I've had about the kind of stuff I'm into. And I remember afterwards, you left, and I emailed you like that night, and I was like, if I wanted to start a horror show, what would I do? Like, how would I start in LA? And you wrote me like what would have been the equivalent of like a 2-page answer.
Wow.
And the next day, and literally got me in contact with all the people who started contact, like Lawrence Raffel, Steve Barton, all these people. And from then on, then I created the show and then made another show and then ended up here. So literally, and even though that's just like one, I think when you guys were talking about community earlier, like the horror people go beyond, there's a lot of heart. The biggest surprise I had moving to LA was how much heart horror fans and friends, that no one was like what I thought they'd be like.
A lot of people, I mean, Rob G, when I remember the I guess the peak of the Fright Club was in 2006, 2007, and there was just such a tight knit group of people, and it was just timing. Everyone was just kind of like either in between projects or promoting stuff, and we were all just like hanging out every week, and it was great, But then everybody has to go off and do their own thing, but we all obviously stay in touch with each other, and it's such a tight knit group. It's a family.
Yeah,
it really is.
It saved me. I mean, it kept me in LA because when I came out here, I was really strictly doing comedy at first. So I was doing stand-up and the stand-up circuit and all that other stuff. And like, those are the most miserable human beings you will ever meet in your life.
I've married a stand-up comedian.
Oh God, I am sorry.
He quit doing it, thank God. But it was just that's what he did when we were in New York City. And I mean, he had a great career with it. He opened for Louis C.K. and a whole bunch of other people.
Wow.
And I despised him as a stand-up comedian because he was just self-deprecating and hated everything. And I mean, he's a funny guy, but he was not funny while he was writing comedy. He was just a miserable asshole.
It's all from pain. That's why. And it's hard. But the horror community is just, it's much better. And the fact that they can be happy for each other when something good happens,
truly support each other.
Everybody
supports each other.
Somebody's movie suddenly, lucks out and gets this big theatrical release and a big push. That's freaking awesome.
Well, I think you see it with James. You see it with James Wan getting, say, Fast and Furious.
Oh my God!
The reaction from everyone.
So
the second I heard that, it was like, "Woohoo! One for us!"
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
But in the comedy world, it would be, "Are you kidding me? Him? Really?"
Yeah,
yeah. So
it's people, unless they ever get to come out here and see it for themselves, it's hard to believe. Like the trivia night thing we do is you just look around and go, "Hey, it's Larry Zerner," or whatever, and you're like, but everyone's just like cool, and it's like the fun competitive. It's really cool.
Yeah. So I couldn't stand the comedy world since said I got to do horror, which is equally my love, and bring my comedy shtick to it somehow. And thankfully, it's so far so good.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, we stick around because these headlines, one of you might end up directing one of these, especially the big news today that Christopher Nolan is not directing Friday the 13th.
Christopher Nolan
That's breaking news.
Was he ever directing?
Yes.
No.
Jason and Armani. Boom.
He's being witty.
But no, it was on the same headline.
Oh, really?
If I was skimming my Twitter, it was like Christopher Nolan Friday 13th. Oh, Paramount. Oh, what?
Paramount made a big deal, and in this story, it said both Christopher Nolan and Halloween, and in most news places, they kind of put bold on them. So when you were like glancing over the articles, it was like
the company gave up.
Halloween.
They gave up Friday the 13th so as they could have a piece of the new Christopher Nolan film.
New line or Warner.
So now it's all Paramount.
So now Friday the 13th is back at Paramount.
Yeah,
just Paramount
they
by
the
themselves.
rights just so they can get a piece of Christopher Nolan's new movie. Yep.
But my fear with that is part of the deal is that they have to make Friday the 13th movie every 5 years to hold.
They'll make one in 5 years if it's just
5 months.
But see, that's what happened to Hellraiser, where they had to make one every couple of years to hold on to.
But that wasn't Paramount. That wasn't Paramount.
That's true. But they start going down really quickly when you have to rush them out.
Just throw some pins on that guy's face; he'll be fine.
Friday the 13th don't get bad when you have to rush them out. They get better.
It's fine.
I can't get into it, but obviously, the Friday 13th remake did well, and there was talk for a while about a sequel, and I definitely was talking to people.
Right.
It's. I have no idea what to think of that.
It was a rights nightmare, though. That was the problem, right? Even though it made a lot of money because of the two companies.
There was the fact that one of the companies was very insistent that it needed to be a certain type of thing.
A found footage movie.
Oh, we know.
They wanted
to do found footage.
You don't have to dance around
I'm
it.
not saying.
I actually didn't know any of this, so.
I'm not saying that particular thing. I'm just saying it
Fine.
was.
You know what? You always talk about nights when I can't. Well, I can say it. It was supposed to be a fucking found footage movie. Stupid fucking idea.
In the snow or not? Is that not the snow?
No. Well,
that's a different script.
You know what? The snow idea would have been great.
It's awesome.
That would have been awesome.
Hold on,
Blood on the
I've never
snow.
heard the snow
Yeah, blood on the
idea.
snow.
I'm not saying anything. There is no snow idea. It was just, wouldn't it be cool instead of it being the summer and the camp being open if it was in the winter when the kids like that? That was
That's
it.
all I needed.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
that's a cool
It's
idea.
fine.
It's a fantastic idea.
Greenlit.
But anyway, so now that it's back under one roof, well, I don't know. We'll see what happens there. But I mean, I get that all the time just because I do Hatchet with the like, would you ever do a Friday 13th? Like, I don't know. Like, it just depends on the scenario.
I think the 12-year-old inside of you would go, dude.
Well, of course, look, I would love, but I mean, even in Halloween as well, just to be part of that legacy and have had done something would certainly be cool. But it's got, like, you also don't want to be the guy who completely ruined it.
Yeah.
And you never had a fair shot because they said, we want you to do it, but here's the parameters and it's got to be like this and this has to happen. Like, then no. Thankfully, I'm at a point in my career, I don't have to just take a job to be like, well, screw it, it's a job. So,
yeah, we were talking before how cool it would be to be giving these tentpole franchises to the up and coming directors. Like, so when Poltergeist, I know we know, say Ty West. Oh yeah, Ty West. All right, hey, do something with Poltergeist.
Wait,
make
isn't
it your
Bill
own.
Keenan from Monster
now
House
it is.
doing it?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, that's
great.
an awesome idea.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, these guys, like, giving people, like, somebody, like, say you're Adam Wingard and you make your next.
Give Wingard and Barrett that.
Right.
You know,
if
like,
that's their next, if his next film would have been, say, Halloween back then, like, not now, not post Rob Zombie, but if somebody was thinking in that way, you would be reinventing these things in a new way rather than just trying to hit the boxes again and making it bigger. The problem with the Platinum Dune stuff was that whole feeling of, hey, it's not taboo anymore because look, it's made for $50 million and it looks so glossy. It looks like Transformers. It's like, well, that's not what we enjoy. One of the elements of horror is that feeling of taboo that you shouldn't watch it.
Platinum Dunes does get, I mean, I think I took a shot at them in the episode last night, right? That was the Exorcist joke, right?
Yeah.
That was last night, yeah. I mean, but I'm friends with them, so I can do that. But like everyone loves to give them shit, but they have made some good ones. They really have.
I still think Texas Chainsaw is
I love
one of the
Love
better
it.
remakes out there.
it is one of the better remakes.
And
But I don't know if,
they've made 4 original movies that everyone likes to forget about, but those didn't do well. What does well is the remakes because horror fans love remakes. They live for them.
They love to hate them too.
No, they love to say they hate them, but they are the first in line to go see it. They will buy that DVD, and then when there's a special edition, they will buy that to hate that too. They love remakes, and they always get so mad when I say that. No, we don't. Yes, you do. You love them.
I think they do. I think my problem wasn't that they remake. My problem is, like, I think they missed that a key element of horror is this feeling that, oh, I shouldn't be watching it. The way it looks, the aesthetic of Friday 13th felt like it was shot in a certain way that was like,
there was flares in the shot.
But that was then, and that's what that was.
Don't you think that's a generational thing?
Yeah, maybe it could be.
If they're just going to remake it and make it look exactly the same, this is taking those characters and that story and telling it now this way. So you can't, and that, like, I've never done a remake, but that's got to be hard because you don't want to be so beholden to the original that all you're going to do is mimic it and be like, well, this is what people liked about it, so I'm going to do all this stuff again. You have to be able to have the balls to say, I'm going to take this character, I'm going to take the spirit of this, and I'm going to do it as a modern movie.
Well, balls don't get bigger than going, I'm making Evil Dead without Ash. I mean, to me, that was such a bold thing for him. That's pretty bold. I mean,
It depends on how much of the movie you watch before you go, it doesn't have Ash in it.
well, he's not part of the
it's like,
narrative.
right,
I'm sorry. I'm just going to say, I know what happened with that. It was a week before release, and Fetty went, shit, we don't have Ash in it? Oh, wait, Bruce is against the wall. Let me grab my iPhone and shoot him.
Yeah.
Well, they did have his car from the beginning.
That was great.
Yeah, there was a
That
lot
was
of little
very cool.
nods to
But you know, to go
fan.
off what Adam was saying, it's like, no matter what, you know, if you're going to be making a remake, if you're going to be doing it in a market where you're trying to hit like 4 quadrants and you're trying to make an opening weekend, you're going to make a movie for that generation. You're not going to be so beholden to the Raimi style or that kind of that Raimi charm that we all loved from our generation, that like tongue is hanging out of cheek kind of humor.
Right.
This is a different generation.
Yeah.
You know, like when I walked out of that film, I went, really well made movie, not my generation's movie,
Right.
not my Evil Dead. You know,
Yeah.
And can you imagine the pressure? Like if you were Rob Zombie making Halloween. Now the Weinsteins, which are notoriously a very opinionated, involved company with everything they do, rightfully so, and you hire Rob Zombie to get Rob Zombie's version of Halloween. That's what they wanted to do. That was the decision, and that's what they did. And to jump on that grenade of knowing no matter what I do,
It was my version of the film.
and then there's going to be people that are going to either are going to hate it, and there's a younger generation. I mean, I'm out there at the conventions all the time. They love it. They think it's way better than Carpenters. They can't even watch Carpenters. It's a generational thing or whatever. So you can't like it just because it's not what you wanted. And like for me, like I mean, Halloween's like my holy grail. Like in my top 3 favorite movies of all time ever, like up there with E.T. And so no matter what, I was never going to be like, I like this better than the original. It was never going to happen for me because it's too precious. But for a whole other generation, and he did his thing. He did his Rob Zombie thing with it. So it's like that's what
I don't know.
is.
There was a sincere lack of devil man in it.
Yeah. I don't blame. Just really quickly to on that point, I don't blame horror fans for remakes because, like, being a horror fanatic like we are.
Why do you think they make them?
Well, no, they make them for a mass audience, for teenagers today.
But
Evil Dead, the remake, is not for us. It's not for the people that grew up on Evil Dead.
Okay.
It's for teenagers that are going to go out on a Friday night.
Who had older brothers who said, dude, Evil Dead is awesome.
They might sort of recognize it, but be like, oh, all right, cool, I'm going to go see that. Because the example I always give is Nightmare on Elm Street. When I was little, my cousins were the ones that forced me to watch Nightmare on Elm Street and got me into that, And now they're married and have kids and they don't give a shit about horror, not at all. I'm the one that
they were like, they made more movies than the first one?
But that's the thing. The remake, now that they have kids and they have their lives, it's like,
hold on, wait, when you have kids, you stop.
No, this doesn't pertain to us because we're still horror fans. I'm saying, like, my cousins were like typical teenagers that just liked whatever was kind of cool, and I was the one that gravitated towards it. But then, like, Paranormal Activity came out, and it's like they're not the type that go to horror movies all the time. They're like, oh, this is the one scary one that we're going to go on a date to tonight, and that's why that movie's so big. Is because it's beyond horror fans. It's a general audience.
But it also takes a movie like
Nightmare.
that.
They're like, oh, there's a new Nightmare on Elm Street movie. They don't give a crap that Robert Englund's not in it. My cousins that showed me the original went to go see the remake because they didn't know any better. They're like, oh, there's a new Freddy movie. That's what we'll go see tonight on our date night.
But you're talking about a very small percentage. I mean, like, being out there doing the conventions, just in the position I'm in, I from the chair I'm sitting in, they love the remakes. They all because you'll ask them, like, all right, so what movies have you seen this year? It's only the remakes.
Yeah.
This is every kid who comes up and it's like, did you ever see Grace? Did you ever see Inside? Did you ever see Let the Right One In? No, they no, not a care in the world, and they're not going to.
We have a problem with that.
They will only see the remakes. That's it, because they recognize the title, they recognize the thing, and that is unfortunately now. Of course, like, you're not like that, you're not like that, I'm not like that, but it's like, but we're also an older generation of horror fan who has sort of defined our taste in it, I guess you could say.
I think we were one of the last generations who accepted original films without having an IP that you knew from a previous film.
But
although that changed though in the 80s when you had the Thing, The Fly, The Blob.
Sure.
And sequels.
And critics had nothing to do with how we watch VHS. None of us sat around reading reviews online.
Absolutely
and
not.
And now that's how people, before they rent something or push Netflix streaming, they go quickly to Rotten Tomatoes. 50, I'll skip that one.
I look at the Netflix stars. If I look at something and it's like so 1.5, I'm like, I'm not going to bother. This is bad.
Yeah, I mean,
it's hard.
That's really hard, but especially if it's like an independent movie where maybe only 10 people voted and 9 of them just hate the director. So it's like, because I've seen that happen to other like friends' movies where all of a sudden they have like a 2 on IMDb and the thing isn't even out yet.
It's
like,
rough when it's not out. That's
it
crazy.
Happened with After Earth where it had like a 98% on IMDb and it hasn't even been released yet. That was like a month ago. But we've had that problem with at Comic-Con every year we do a trivia thing at the Fango booth where we ask trivia questions to the people who come up, and if they get them right, they get a free thing. I think you guys did something similar with FEARnet. And last year I wrote the questions, and I thought I wrote them incredibly easy about films everybody would know. And I mean, and you want these people to win, so I'd be like, well, what film do you like? I like Rob Zombie stuff. Well, hold on. Now I really have to think to come up with
Yeah,
but
that happened to me at Monster Mania. I couldn't even get people to answer questions.
It's a business though, and if those remakes didn't pull in the money that they made, they wouldn't have made more of them. That it just would have been done. It would have been like, okay, well now let's keep looking for original stuff. But original stuff does not do well. Usually, there's always an exception to the rule, and the remakes do gangbusters. And I agree with what you're saying, Rob, though, in the fact that they do appeal outside beyond the horror genre because it's an IP, because they all know that name. So I agree with you there. But at the same time, when you actually go, as far as I'm concerned, if you're paying for the gold pass or the silver pass or whatever the fuck the pass is to go to a horror convention, you're a horror fan.
Yeah.
Like you're interested. And when I'm like, what movies have you seen? And it's only remakes, and they're wearing the T-shirt of the remake, and that's it. And you start asking about other movies and stuff, and they don't know it.
I'm not doubting that, but I feel like that's 10-15% of the audience that's making something like Texas Chainsaw 3D a hit. Is, it's people.
Was that a hit?
A lot of that's the opening weekend.
Opening
It's a
weekend,
hit.
and then it dropped. But the thing is, who's the rapper guy? And I don't even know his name. But it's like 90% of the people that made that movie successful were because they wanted to see like the rap guy that was in it.
I don't even.
I didn't know that guy.
I didn't know that guy was a rapper.
I think it's the title.
Look, Rob, just because he's black doesn't mean he's a hip hop artist. Let's be fair.
I don't think it should be about whether we should be doing remakes. That, for me, isn't the issue. It's about
there's
the
great
quality
remakes.
of the remakes. Yeah. And a lot of them aren't great.
Absolutely.
And so it's more about when they phone it in, when it seems, and we know, you guys know more than anyone, all the intrusion that's going to happen in a film, especially at a big budget, and all the decisions you don't get to make. But I'm just saying, I would love to see them hire original voices. And even though I don't even really like Rob Zombie's Halloween one, I totally respect how that was made. I think that's awesome that they took a risk
I
on
agree.
that.
And
One of my favorite movies that I've seen this year was a remake. It was Maniac.
Because
Because that it completely addresses what you were saying.
they
You
did their
could
own
have
unique
made a
spin.
William Lustig version of that for 59 cents on your iPhone. If you really wanted to get down with it, just make sure you have Tom Savini on your set. But Frank and Aja and those guys took a whole new direction with it, took a whole new stance. That wasn't supposed to work. I was the first person to say, wait, you can't make a whole movie based on the
Lady in the Lake style.
Yeah.
But what's cool is it is a remake of the original.
Yeah.
They hit all the beats.
It
feels very similar.
It feels like a Lustig movie, but just with a different spin on it, and that's the reason why. I thought it was fantastic.
That's how remakes should be. That's how people should approach it.
If you're going to take that story, you
what
might
new
as well,
can you give us from
because
the old?
no matter what, like look at Fright Night. Fright Night, when that movie came out, they released the Blu-ray on out there, and it made everyone reappreciate the original one. So that's great. Now I want to see what Gillespie and all those guys and Mike DeLuca have up their sleeve to get kids to watch the original one, and all they made everyone do is go, God, the original one's so much better. But they'll still have a new generation who's like, dude, I love Fright. How many people I met?
AJ Bowen, right?
Yeah.
He always defends that on Twitter. He loves it.
I don't mind the new one. It's not horrible.
Oh God, I could not get out of that theater faster.
Fright
And I
Night
don't
Part
like
2 is the best of all three.
That was
Tommy
Tommy
Lee
Wallace,
Wallace
right?
knocked that one out of the park.
had a
love
great
interest.
poster.
as a writer, though, when you have an original script and your agent sends it out and all these execs want to meet with you and you go on like, we love the writing, this is a great story. It's like, wow, do they want to make this? No. But we have these three remake titles. Do any of these interest you? And it's like, well, what about this one? What about, well, no, we're not going to do that because no one's going to go see that because it's original. But the worst was meeting at a place where I pitched them something that they were like, that is one of the best pitches we've ever heard. That movie has to get made. Can we call it Rosemary's Baby? I'm like, it has nothing to do with Rosemary's Baby. There's not even a baby in it.
Oh God.
I'm like, what? And they're like, it doesn't matter. We have the rights to that title. So if we call this Rosemary's Baby, it will open at 32. So we'll do it if you'll call it Rosemary's Baby. And I said no. So it's like, I don't want to be the guy that fucked up Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah,
somewhere out there's a zombie film in development that's going to be called
It's going to be called Rosemary's Baby. But like that's
Really
what I mean in terms of like the people making the decision, their fingers on the button
Well, did
to
you
release
see that
money to make something.
Soderbergh speech recently where he did it's online. I mean, it's incredible.
It's
just
dead
hits
on.
everything.
Tear to my eye.
Dead on.
Yeah, and then he's backing it up by doing what he's stepping away and not partaking in that part of the world anymore. Finding a different niche for himself. It's fascinating though.
And you can't get too down on it though. There are good execs out there. There's really good execs. And again, to go back to Holliston, somebody greenlit that. Somebody said, you know what, let's do it.
Well, any good film you've seen this year, like Stoker. I watched Stoker. I was like, how did this happen? Like I'm watching the film going, this is gorgeous. The design is just, and somebody had to make that happen. So
but
you're
but
right.
it wasn't just that let's greenlight this.
Right.
It's let's stake our company on this. Like that's a ballsy move. So for every place that's scared to do anything because the remakes pull the numbers and that's all they care about, there are other execs who do still want to tell original stories because nobody got into this business because they wanted to just do remakes. Everybody, whether you're an exec, the writer, the PA, whatever, wherever you're at that point, you want to be a storyteller. But and there are good people out there. There really are. And I love that we've now remade everything. There's nothing left. So
The mutilator.
Okay, well,
I've been waiting.
That was probably not going to happen.
What?
But,
by hook? By
3 on a meat hook. I was planning
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
That's I'm going to shoot it this
we
weekend.
have a
I will say
meat hook reference
pieces.
in
Somebody should do
Holliston
pieces.
Episode,
Oh, really?
episode. Oh God, it's coming up this season. We have
I
3
have
on meat
the
hook.
original VHS with that cool
I
box
did-
cover
I did too.
of the 3 big-haired
such a
80
great
chicks.
We're
Yeah.
almost at the 3.5 hour mark
We
of
are
our podcast.
at the 2-hour mark.
Wow. Is this the longest one you guys have done?
Yes.
Yes.
This is
And
I
nothing.
knew that was going to happen.
This is
we
our
tend to
warm-up.
talk forever.
Well,
so,
considering we didn't ask Adam a question till the 1 hour mark, I figure it makes sense that we're just getting warmed up.
But I did like all your insight about all the stuff that I didn't know what you were talking about.
Very esoteric.
Esoteric.
Yeah.
That means
Esoteric.
homoerotic.
There's probably a bunch of esoteric moments in this podcast today.
I would think
that people
so.
will be.
I'm horny.
Yeah.
Last bit of news
Oh, yeah.
because
I
I really
forgot.
have to go to the bathroom from all these.
I have to go to the bathroom. I did this whole thing.
He drank a big gulp.
Insidious 2 trailer just premiered. Did everyone
That
see it?
trailer is
It, is.
fantastic.
I
It
haven't
looks
seen it.
really
If
awesome.
anything, if James Wan just continues to make the best trailers,
Yeah,
between
yeah.
the-
Conjuring was
Conjuring
amazing.
trailer
between The
kicked ass.
Conjuring
Yeah.
and Insidious Part 2, you haven't seen it yet?
No, I haven't
Dude,
seen it.
it's going to
Oh,
freak
it's
you the
amazing.
fuck
Have you seen the
out.
Conjuring trailer yet?
Yes, I
Even
love
the
it.
trailer, I mean, I wrote to James right after I saw Insidious 2, and I'm like, why are you so good at making scary movies and scary trailers? What they're because they are.
And he
they're
wanted
just
to be a
so
romantic
good.
comedy guy.
I know,
Yeah.
I know, but it's so good. I can't wait to see it.
It looks amazing. And you know, if
I
you're an
loved
Insidious,
Insidious.
I loved Insidious. And,
Me too.
and the reason why I loved Insidious was, I mean, if you really think about it, it's kind of a remake of Poltergeist,
Yeah,
but it's
pretty
not.
much.
You know,
It's not.
so if
It
anything,
gives you
No.
the
if
nice
you're gonna
feeling
take-
of that without giving you the
Exactly.
same story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't have to be about the feelings. It doesn't have to have a TV in it.
Right.
But it's got enough creepy tropes, and it deals with all the things
Yeah.
you love about
Yeah,
Poltergeist.
it's
which
the
is
essence of that
A
movie.
real family stuck
Yeah.
in an extraordinary situation, and then in a grounded sort of way.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's expanding on that for the next one, I love that it's part 2.
Yeah,
You know,
and it looks like it's going really weird, which I like. I like when
can't
sequels
wait.
go.
Now, some of us are friends with the guy that played the demon in it, Joe Bashar. Does
Yes.
anyone know is Bashar back in this one, or is Juan keeping that on the down low? Because I remember when he was first making it, and Bashar would like send us some pictures like, "Oh my God, dude, you're playing a scary old bitch!" Like you know, and Joe is a composer.
Oh, he wasn't
you know?
a scary old bitch. He was.
Yeah, he was the
the
demon
red.
dude.
Demon,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, but
The
he would
red.
send that stuff
The
to us.
scary
I'm
old
like,
bitch was actually a scary old dude.
isn't that Joe Bashar?
No,
yeah. Joe Bashar is the main demon in Insidious.
Yeah.
and he. If you've seen the poster, Conjuring,
He's the
that
He's Darth Maul.
Yeah.
girl as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
Like,
the
have you
scary,
seen the trailer
scary
with
woman in like
That-
the
yeah.
black cloaks and everything is an
I'm so
old
sorry to
man.
this, but
Yes.
I'm going to pee my pants if I don't go to the bathroom right now.
Me too.
Wow.
The,
and Adam
That's our
Green is
first
gone.
walkout.
He's gone. He ran to the bathroom. No, the trailer for Conjuring with the
That's him.
show.
Oh, yeah, that's incredible. That trailer is
Yeah.
beautiful.
Wow.
Pretty awesome.
I can't wait for Insidious Part
Yeah.
2. That comes out in September, right?
September, Friday the 13th.
September, Friday the 13th.
And they moved
Very nice.
Conjuring up. It was originally supposed to hit Falls 2, but they bumped it up to July.
I
So
remember
it's like summer hit.
I remember being in New Line last year, and it was the day after the first Conjuring screening they had, and they had no clue it was going to be. And the entire meeting, it was a general meeting, and the entire meeting, the guy could not stop talking about The Conjuring. I'm
Wow,
like,
cool.
so enough about me, let's talk about me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm sure we will try to have James Wan on the show.
Oh, man.
I talked to him this week. He was in Dubai. So
Yeah, I'm sure he's-
hanging out with
He's all over
Statham,
the
no
place.
big whoop.
No big
Yeah.
deal. Yeah, that's going to be a massive undertaking.
But-
I think I
So
did
now
try to
that
get him
Adam's
out,
gone,
I just
let's
touched-
talk about the real deal. Let's,
I just
this podcast begins now.
I went to move the cord under the table and stuck my hand in something really sticky. So
Oh, yeah.
we have to
Yeah,
end
let's
soon.
end
That was a big.
but listen, thank
It
you.
wasn't me, I swear.
Thank
This
you so
time.
much, Joe, for coming on. Thanks, Adam, in the bathroom for coming on. We really appreciate it. They have a show here as well called The Movie Crypt, so you can listen to more of Adam and Joe here. On
And next
vacation.
Tuesday we will be going to the premiere of his other.
Oh yeah, Hatchet
Hatchet
3.
Three.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to be a
At the
soiree.
Egyptian.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Alrighty. So we'll see you guys next week.
Vaya con Dios.